actually, he began to write a little bit of an autobiography just in the weeks before his death. And from those pages, I was struck by the amount of uncertainty that there was about the man. This man who was so confident in court, who charmed juries so famously, but in some ways felt that he was an actor, in some ways felt that he was fighting back nerves and uncertainties. Is that true?
I think he was quite worried about every case. It was much more that he was concerned for the client. He always wanted to do his best. He worked so hard to win a case, not really for his personal satisfaction, but because he didn't want to let people down.
His success rate was extraordinary, and, you know, I'll choose my words carefully here, but shall we say that many people were surprised at the time that Jeremy Thorpe was found not guilty. It was astonishing in the case of Jonathan Aitken, for example, that the principal charge against him, which was that he'd been corrupt in arms dealings, I don't think that was ever actually reached during the court. It seems even more surprising today that people who were employed by Mohammed Fayed were believed in the case of Neil Hamilton. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, his results are extraordinary.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Boxing Day, and you're watching Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. I'm Miriam Cates. Now, after the indulgence of yesterday's Christmas lunch, many of us are trying to figure out what to do with the leftovers. We'll be discussing what you can make with all that cold turkey. And it's a big day for bargain hunters as the Boxing Day sales start, with Brits expected to spend an eye-watering £3.7 billion in this year's sales. And it's also a big day for Premier League football, with Manchester United hoping to turn around their fortunes and Liverpool looking to extend their lead at the top of the table. I'll be joined by Aidan McGee for all the latest sports news. Now, earlier today, Reform UK announced that they have overtaken the Conservative Party in terms of membership numbers. Is this a sign that Nigel Farage is expected to head to number 10 at the next election? Well, I hope you had a very Merry Christmas yesterday and that you're eating all your leftovers today. I've just had mine for lunch. As always, during the show, please do send your views and post your comments visiting gbnews.com/yoursay. But first of all, here are the headlines with Sam Francis.
Miriam, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Just coming up to 2 minutes past 3, and a very happy Boxing Day to you. Well, a plane that crashed, killing 38 people, was shot down by Russian air defence systems, according to sources speaking to the Reuters news agency. The Azerbaijan Airlines plane had been flying east across the Caspian Sea when it changed course and went down in Kazakhstan. Footage circulating online shows the plane making a steep descent before crashing into a fireball, with part of its fuselage torn away from its wings. We've also heard from the broadcaster Euronews in the last hour or so, citing Azerbaijani government sources reporting that after a preliminary investigation, a Russian surface-to-air missile, they say, was fired towards a plane during drone activity in the sky. That then exploded next to the aircraft, with the shrapnel reportedly hitting passengers and crew in that aircraft. So an investigation now underway into the circumstances of that disaster. But as I say, the latest details coming to us from sources speaking to the Reuters news agency that a Russian air defence system is responsible for shooting down that passenger aircraft. And in some more breaking news to bring you here at home, 451 migrants crossed the English Channel illegally on Christmas Day yesterday, according to official figures from the Home Office out in the last few minutes. 6 more small boats carrying at least 250 migrants have reached UK waters today. The latest arrivals have been brought to the Border Force Processing Centre in Dover. And with calmer weather conditions expected to continue, Border Force is now on heightened alert for a potential further surge in crossings. And the situation is also being closely monitored as authorities brace for more arrivals in the coming days. Reform UK's membership has overtaken the Conservatives just months after Nigel Farage's return as leader. The party's tracker shows more than 132,000 members now. That's a 300% surge since Farage's comeback in June. Young supporters, cheaper fees and frustrations with the Tories are all driving the growth, with Farage claiming that reform is the future of British politics. It comes as the Conservatives last reported around 120,000 members, but have since faced criticism for a lack of direction under Kemi Badenoch. Well, the Reform leader Nigel Farage has been speaking to our Home and Security editor Mark White and gave us these thoughts about those figures.
Incredible. Over 15,000 people have joined us and given us their 25 quids over the last 4 days. This is an historic moment when the newest party in British politics overtakes the oldest existing political party in the world. Something is happening. So, of course, I'm delighted.
A double murder investigation has been launched in Milton Keynes after 2 women have died following reports of a stabbing there. Thames Valley Police say the woman, aged 38, the other 24, both died at the scene in Bletchley on Christmas Day. We've also heard that a teenage boy and a man in his late 20s are also seriously injured following that incident, but are currently stable in hospital. A dog was also injured in the incident, taken to vets, but sadly didn't survive. Police have arrested a 49-year-old man on suspicion of murder and attempted murder, and he remains in custody. The government is facing mounting pressure to deliver on its promise to ban trail hunting as Boxing Day hunts have gathered across the UK today. Campaigners say the practice, which mimics banned fox hunting, is a smokescreen for illegal activity, citing hundreds of reports of wildlife and public disruption. Labour has pledged tougher laws, while ministers say they're considering harsher fines and prosecution rules for reckless hunting. But the Countryside Alliance defends the practice, saying it's essential for rural life. At this stage, no timeline has been given for when the crackdown may take effect. Well, we can go back now to Nigel Farage. He's been speaking, as I say, to our Home and Security editor Mark White in Chiddingstone about that.
Whether you support fox hunting or not, as I say, has now become the tip of the iceberg in a much bigger issue about the way in which rural communities are being shut out, their opinions are being ignored. And we hear a lot about two-tier Britain. Well, this is very two-tier. If you're in the big cities, you matter. If you're living out in villages like this, increasingly it feels like you don't. And I do think, and we've seen the farming protests taking off around the country, peaceful farming protests. I do think you're going to get Labour MPs representing these seats feeling very twitchy.
And Boxing Day shoppers seem to be avoiding the high street today, with footfall down reportedly over 12% compared to last year's figures. Retail parks have fared slightly better, but overall activity across the whole of the UK is more than 10% lower than in 2023. Analysts are blaming the shift to online shopping, rising costs for physical stores and changing habits, driven by year-round promotions. Barclays, though, estimates we will still be spending £4.6 billion today, but most of it, as in previous years, will be online. Well, our reporter Will Hollis has been on the high street in Nottingham for us today with more details on what people are spending.
We're expected to see about 22 million people shopping for Boxing Day sales, but only 14 million of those shoppers will actually be real people on the high street. That good chunk of about 8 million people will just be people that will be logging on online, tapping away and making their purchases online, because, as we say, many of the big retailers are staying closed. They would cite that it's because they want people to have more of a family experience, let their staff rest.
Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in around half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Miriam.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back, and let's return now to the story about the Azerbaijan Airlines plane that crashed, sadly, on Christmas Day yesterday, killing 38 people. According to the Reuters news agent, the plane was shot down by a Russian air defence system. And footage online does show the plane making a steep descent before crashing into a fireball, with part of its fuselage torn away from the wings. Now, joining us now to discuss this crash and its potential causes, we have former British Army spokesman Major Mike Shearer joining us now. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Certainly a lot of speculation now that this plane may actually have been shot down by Russian air defence systems. Do you think that's likely? Have the Russian authorities said anything about this?
Well, I'm afraid it is speculation at the moment, but it is more probable that has been an error by the Russians than it was a bird strike. The reported dialogue coming from the cockpit to air traffic control would suggest that it was more than just a bird strike. And I guess it just really demonstrates how nervous Russia are in the southern end of their country, because we do know that there were drones active, Ukrainian drones active in the area.
Yes, of course, a very difficult part of the world. And understandably, the Russians are not going to confirm or deny anything, but there is footage circulating online showing what appears to be shots or perhaps shell injuries to the plane. Given that the Russians aren't going to confirm or deny it, do you think we will find out any more information about this crash?
Yes, almost certainly we will get to the bottom of this. First of all, and thankfully, there are a number of survivors who will be able to give testimony to this. I understand the black boxes have also been recovered. So I think in the fullness of time, we will get to the bottom of it. And sadly, there are now innocent civilians dead as a result of this knee-jerk reaction from the Russian state. Mm.
Yes, a serious tragedy there. Mike, thank you so much for joining us, and we will, of course, bring you all the latest news as any more information unfolds. Now, after the indulgence of Christmas Day, many of us are trying to figure out what to do with those leftovers. Many traditions out there, including making sandwiches, curry and even stews out of the leftover turkey. But if you fancy getting a little bit more creative this year, we've now got a professional chef to give her top tips on how to cook up a storm this Boxing Day. Catherine Goodsell from the Dinner Ladies is now joining us down the line from Sussex. Catherine, thank you so much for joining us. What will you be doing with your leftovers?
Hi there, and thank you for having me on. So if you're like my family and you get a bit fed up of Christmas flavours after Boxing Day, we tend to infuse some Asian flavours into our food. So one really great idea is to take your lovely turkey carcass, make a lovely broth, infuse it with ginger, lemongrass, chilli, and then you can finish it with some noodles. If you're looking for a bit more of a hearty dish, tear up your turkey, add that in and heat it up. That's a lovely dish. And then a vegetarian idea is to make some patties using your leftover potatoes, parsnips, Brussels sprouts, make a nice mash. You can cover them in panko breadcrumbs, fry them or bake them in the oven. Serve them with a lovely herbed yogurt, with a lovely fresh salad to the side for something lighter. It's all about light and fresh flavours. I know everyone's a bit fed up with the heavy food.
Absolutely. And how long is it safe to keep the turkey for once it's been cooked and it's been out resting for a few hours?
Normally, you'd say about 5 days maximum. But, I mean, yeah, if you can always freeze it. At worst case, a couple of days after it's cooked, you freeze it in bags, flat in the freezer. It can last up to 3 months. And then you can always take it out later down the line for stews, soups. If you're back at work, tear it up into salads. You can still use it very well. So
lots of options there. Catherine, thank you so much for joining us. And please do let us know at home what you're doing with your leftovers. Do get in touch on gbnews.com. You'll say. Now, to discuss this further and what particular recipes we might have, I've got my panel today. We've got broadcaster and author Paula London and political commentator Chloe Dobbs. Chloe, starting with you, will you be doing anything exciting with leftovers over the next few days?
Well, I already finished them for breakfast this morning. Instead of my usual porridge, I finished off the rest. Also, yesterday after I had my Christmas dinner, I just sat and let my stomach relax for a couple hours and then had a second portion to try and finish it off. I like to get all the bad eating out of the way in one go and then start fresh healthy eating on Boxing Day.
Back on the wagon.
Yeah.
What about you, Paula?
Well, I didn't make a turkey yesterday. I just cooked some chicken breasts, and then this afternoon I had a nice baguette with chicken breasts and bread sauce, and my dog obviously had the remainder of the chicken, so she was very happy.
But it's not just the turkey, is it? I mean, especially if you have a kind of big family get-together, people tend to overbuy all the other things, whether that's the cheese board, crisps, you know, all these kind of things. You can end up with an awful lot left over, can't you? So, I mean, any other tips for what to do with those other treats?
Well, I mean, the dog is a good way to hoover up any leftovers, absolutely. I quite like the sound of making some kind of Asian cuisine out of it. I would have never, ever thought about that. I mean, I quite like having Christmas I don't get bored of it after one. There's no such thing as too many roast potatoes to me, so I will happily eat roast potatoes for a week if I have to.
And what about the puddings? Christmas pudding, Christmas cake, all those kind of things. I mean, some of those can kind of last forever, but they're kind of going out of fashion now. I think I read somewhere that very few young people under 30 actually like Christmas pudding.
I don't really like Christmas pudding. I like rice pudding, and I'd rather have a glass of wine.
Tastes burnt. Well, maybe
I like mince pies.
Yeah,
but Christmas pudding.
You're supposed to heat the brandy up, pour it over, and set fire.
It is cool seeing it on fire, but tasting it.
Yeah,
no,
it's really rich and it's
too much. Too much.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And then
let the oldies eat.
The next thing that everybody will be on to would be their post-Christmas diet, won't it? And unfortunately, January already comes around too soon. Will you be seeking to cut down or just...
Yeah, well, trying to start today. I mean, I don't like having I finished off all the Christmas chocolates that I had yesterday because I don't like having them sat in the cupboard thinking, oh, one more square, and then it's in the back of your mind, or should I go back for another one? I just like to get it out. I'm a very all or nothing person, as you can probably tell. So, yeah, start fresh now. And you know that you're getting ahead before everyone else does it when it's cool in January.
Yeah, that's right.
So you've got a few days to go to the gym before it gets very busy and horrible on the 1st of January.
Although you might want to wait till they start doing special offers of reduced price gym membership. But one of the many Christmas traditions, of course, is the visitation of Father Christmas. And yesterday on our programme, Michelle Dewberry zoomed in from home, and she had an interesting story to tell about Father Christmas's visit to her house. Here's Michelle.
What's the order of events in your house then? Have you done presents already?
Well, so Santa's been. So, you know, we've got a lot of excited children. We've also had a couple of empty boxes. I've divided opinion with this. You guys and the viewers can tell me what you think. My little boy was a little bit naughty, and Santa wrote a letter in an empty box for him. No. And many people think that Santa shouldn't have done that.
So, Paula, do you think this is a new harsh Santa, not leaving presents for children who misbehave? Do you think Santa's justified in doing that?
I think so, yeah. My parents are pretty strict. So, yeah, I think it's quite good to be strict, so no problem there.
Did Santa ever fail to visit you as a child?
I mean, I sadly admitted to my parents that I didn't...
Well, Santa, of course, is listening.
Yeah. So, but Santa always left me dried fruit in my stocking rather than chocolates, which was rather annoying, I have to say.
A healthy Santa.
Yes. But yeah, I always liked it as a child. Waiting, I would try and sneak and watch and put up cameras and hang upside down from the staircase waiting.
Yeah.
When I was a kid.
No, I mean, Santa, of course, is a big part of Christmas for children, that excitement of coming down and seeing your stockings full. But families have very different traditions, don't they? Some have pillowcases, some have stockings. What did you used to hang up?
I had stockings, and then presents were like in dustbin bags at the bottom of the bed. So, but I have great memories of being a child at Christmas, but I do think it's so much for children.
Yes.
For adults, you're never going to be as excited as children, and you'll never get well, you may get as many presents, but when you're a child, you get like 20, 30 presents sometimes, which is different when you're older.
And also, it does become, unfortunately, quite stressful as an adult, particularly as a parent, you know, having all the things to plan and the Christmas lunch. And, yeah, you never quite get that magic back, do you, from when you were a child?
Yeah, I mean, I still absolutely love Christmas. I know some people, they just say, oh, it's just for kids, and they're basically the Grinch. I've got a few friends like that who are like, oh, it's Christmas. They put the decks up in all the shops and stuff out. I don't like when they put the stuff out in the supermarkets in September.
I saw some in August this year.
Yeah, it's got to be a small part of the year for it to still be enjoyable and not get annoying after many years. But yeah, I think there's something very special, just getting the chance to see friends and family and have a bit of time off work, eating nice food.
It's a nice Christian holiday as well, so I like that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and one of the things that, as you get older, that the things that you enjoy and value about Christmas change, don't they? Like you say, you know, when you're a child, it is all about the presents and the chocolate. And then actually you come to value, I think, more the traditions, the carol services, those kind of things. That did you watch The King yesterday?
I actually didn't, no. We were all in the middle of cooking our dinner and whatnot at the time, so...
Did you watch him?
I watched a bit, but I was quite happy that he was wearing a light blue tie, so it's very similar to Reform colours, so a lot of people were very happy about that.
I did not even...
I was like, get in! So that was good.
Notice that. I thought it was a good...
I doubt it was intentional.
No. I know. Well, I'm joking, but people were saying it was, so I'm like, OK, yes.
Maybe the King is responsible for the surge in Reform membership today.
Maybe that's why they've gone past.
Maybe he's pally with Nigel Farage behind the scenes.
Well, you heard it here first.
Yes.
Well, time now for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to become our biggest ever winner with an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. An amazing sum of money, and it could make this new year your best year yet. Here are all the details you need for a chance to make it yours.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British Giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays? A brand new car? Home improvements? Or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? £50,000 is an amazing amount of money, and it could be all yours. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome back. You're watching Merry Christmas Britain on GB News, and we've got lots more coming up on today's show. Boxing Day sales are underway, but are they becoming a thing of the past, on the high street at least? That's next.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Today I am joined by documentary maker Daniel Wing, who is still trying to find out who murdered his mother 30 years on. He's also created a documentary called Who Murdered You, Mum? Daniel, can you just tell us the story of what happened to your mother, what you know?
So when I was 1 year old in 1992, my mum Tina was murdered. My dad went on trial for it and was acquitted, and the case went unsolved and has been unsolved for 32 years. My nan, who raised me, amazing woman, passed away sadly 2 years ago, and that kind of sent me on a quest for answers.
So your documentary then, what are you hoping to achieve with it?
I am fighting for justice for my mum. I have had a meeting with the police and they are looking to see what they have and are looking to reopen investigation if they can find new and compelling evidence. What's interesting now is speaking to other families who are actually going through the trauma and experience of murder.
Yeah.
My mum didn't get the opportunity to be a mum. What would my life have been? I'm now 33 years old with no parents. And it's that kind of thing. It's a very, I guess, lonely journey in what I'm experiencing. That's why I wanted to make this film, because I hadn't had the opportunity to be able to grieve my mother and know who she was. And that was really what this journey was about. It was about finding out who she was and being able to grieve. Everyone had the opportunity, although terrible circumstances, to be able to go to the funeral and have that moment, and I never had that opportunity.
The People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. You're watching Merry Christmas Britain on GB News with me, Miriam Cates. Now, shoppers across the country set their alarms to wake up early this morning, hoping to nab a bargain in the Boxing Day sales. This tradition began in the 90s when Prime Minister John Major relaxed Sunday trading laws and allowed shops to open on bank holidays. But it's feared that this tradition could be dying out, along with our high streets, with both Next and Marks & Spencer announcing that they won't be opening today. So, is the tradition of Boxing Day sales dying out? Well, consumer and retail expert Helen Dewdney joins us now. Helen, I've already seen the figures from this morning about footfall on the high street down 10% on last year and I think 36% on pre-pandemic levels. It looks as though the tradition of going to the high street on Boxing Day might be over.
I think it is, and I think it's not that the Boxing Day sales per se have stopped or slowed down, it's that everyone is moving to online and being able to do it in the comfort of their own home.
Yes, and of course, one of the problems we've got today, particularly in London, is that loads and loads of the train lines aren't running. So even if people wanted to get into town to shop, it's impossible. Do you think transport plays a big part in the footfall drop?
I think transport does, the weather, you know, you look outside and it's miserable and it's cold. You know, why wouldn't you want to just sit back in front of your laptop with a cup of tea and a biscuit?
Yes, exactly. But you could argue that actually this, although Boxing Day sales is a recent tradition, it's not a particularly historic one. And as we were hearing there, it didn't really start until Sunday and bank holiday trading laws were relaxed in the 90s. Do you think it actually would be a great loss for Boxing Day sales to stop being such a tradition, at least on the high street?
I think it would, but I think we're seeing, you know, the high street having so many problems. And we're seeing, as you mentioned earlier, you know, a lot of the stores not opening, John Lewis not opening, Home Bargains not opening. And so with that means a lot of other smaller stores don't open as well. So it's just not worth sort of people going. So it is a bit of a tradition, really, that is going. And I think although some stores are saying they're not opening their stores on Boxing Day to give their staff a rest, one wonders also if it's also for cost cutting because they're making more money online and they would have to pay their staff extra for working Boxing Day.
What are the best bargains out there if you are going to shop either on the high street or online? What kind of items can you get on Boxing Day that are really worth hanging on for?
Well, it's worth looking, if you're looking online, making sure that you're comparing prices. Just because something is in the sale doesn't mean to say it's necessarily the cheapest place. So use tools like, you know, Price Runner and Kelku and actually compare what you're looking at. Make sure you've got a list, and so that you're not buying things just because you think it's a really good bargain and then you never wear it. But, you know, you might find some little gems like advent calendars because they're going to be really reduced. They're going to be the kinds of things that the stores are going to really want to get rid of. And actually, if they've got, you know, beauty products or something behind them, you could make a really good saving. But make sure you've got that list so you're not, you know, the Christmas cards, the wrapping paper, the crackers, they're going to go very, very quickly. So you want to try and get those, but make sure that you're not getting so many that actually you've got too many next year. You've put them up on the roof and then you've forgotten that you bought them, because I've done that before now.
Yes, absolutely. Very good point. Now, of course, this will reopen the debate about online retailers such as Amazon, who are increasingly making increasing sums of money. I think Amazon made £33.6 billion in net sales in the UK last year. And many people believe they're not being taxed in a way that is fair with the high street. What do you think the government could do to make a more level playing field for those struggling high street shops?
I think we've got to keep fighting that they should be paying a fair amount of tax, because we've seen for years that they haven't been, and it isn't that level playing field. And we're seeing a lot of small businesses are hard hit by the likes of Amazon because they undercut them. And if the small business sells on Amazon, they get a much smaller percentage than if they're selling by themselves. And people are using Amazon because it's so easy and quick. You know, whatever one might say about their customer service, but it can be easy and quick to buy. But certainly more needs to be done about making sure that they are paying the right amount of tax that they should be.
What role do you think parking has to play in high street shopping? You say, obviously, if you've got an account with Amazon, you can get free delivery, whereas if you go to the high street, you often end up having to pay a lot for parking. Is there more that local councils could do, for example, to entice shoppers onto the high street?
I think we're seeing that a lot over the last few years. People have said we need to see more free car parking on our high street, which is absolutely useless anyway. They did bring in some free parking for like 15 minutes, and they're now backtracking on that. So I don't think that's going to help at all. And certainly businesses are calling for more free parking to get people out, particularly those who want to go out and visit and support their small businesses locally.
Well, Helen Junie, thank you so much for joining me, and happy Boxing Day sales. I hope you managed to grab some bargains. And of course, if you're watching at home and you've made some great purchases, do let us know, gbnews.com/your say. Now, one of my favourite traditions at this time of year is the singing of Christmas carols. And here we have on GB News for you exclusively the Vocal Zone Voice Studio Choir from South Derbyshire singing while shepherds watched their flocks by night.
While shepherds watched their flocks by night, all seated on the ground, the angel of the Lord came down and glory shone around. Fear not, said he, for mighty dread hath seized their troubled minds. And tidings of great joy I bring to you and all mankind. To you with David's tell this day is born of David's line a Saviour, which is Christ the Lord, and this shall be the sign. The heavenly babe who there shall find, to you and you displayed. Only the rat is swathing bent, and in a manger laid. Thus spake the seraph, and forthwith appeared a shining throng. All angels praising God, who thus addressed their joyful song. All glory be to God on high, and to the earth be peace. Goodwill henceforth from men to men, begin and never cease.
Beautiful, what a wonderful choir, so Christmassy, lovely to hear. And you're watching Merry Christmas Britain on GB News, and we've got lots more coming up on today's show, including that all-important Boxing Day sport. But here are your headlines with Sam Francis.
Miriam, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Just coming up to 32 minutes past 3. Well, a passenger plane that crashed, killing 38 people, was downed by a Russian air defence system. That's according to the Reuters news agency. Sources say the Azerbaijani Airlines flight was hit by a missile, crippling the jet before it crashed into Kazakhstan. Mobile footage has shown the jet in a steep descent. Passengers seen praying as oxygen masks fell inside the cabin in and the wreckage engulfed in flames. The Kremlin, though, denies any deliberate action, instead blaming a bird strike, but Azerbaijan is demanding that Russia does admit responsibility. 451 migrants crossed the English Channel illegally on Christmas Day, according to official Home Office figures. 6 more small boats carrying at least 250 people have also reached UK waters today. The latest arrivals have been brought to the Border Force Processing Centre in Dover. And with calm weather conditions expected to continue, Border Force says it is on heightened alert for a potential surge in crossings. A double murder investigation has been launched today after 2 women died following reports of a stabbing in Milton Keynes. Thames Valley Police's major crime unit says the women aged 38 and 24 sadly died at the scene in Bletchley on Christmas Day. A teenage boy and a man in his late 20s are also seriously injured but stable in hospital. A dog was also injured in the incident and was taken to vets but sadly didn't survive. Police have arrested a 49-year-old man on suspicion of murder and attempted murder, and he remains in custody. And Reform UK's membership has overtaken the Conservatives just months after Nigel Farage's return as leader. The party's tracker shows more than 132,000 members now, a 300% surge since Farage's comeback. Young supporters, cheap fees and frustrations with the Tories are all driving the growth as Farage claims that Reform is now the future of British politics. The Conservatives, though, last reported around 120,000 members and have since faced criticism for a lack of direction under the leader, Kemi Badenoch. Well, Reform's leader, Nigel Farage, has been speaking today to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, about those figures.
Incredible. Over 15,000 people have joined us and given us their 25 quids over the last 4 days. This is an historic moment when the newest party in British politics overtakes the oldest existing political party in the world. Something is happening. So, of course, I'm delighted.
Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour, and Miriam will be back after this short break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good afternoon. This is your latest GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Dull, damp, dreary, all words that sum up the forecast for many of us over the next few days. Whilst high pressure is in charge, extending in from parts of continental Europe, there is a lot of cloud trapped underneath this high, producing our anticyclonic gloom. Quite misty and murky scenes into this evening and overnight, particularly across Wales, central southern areas of England. Band of rain just pushing across the far north of Scotland, skirting into the Highlands, the Outer Hebrides and towards Orkney as well, quite damp and drizzly here. With all the cloud around though, temperatures won't be dropping too far at least. We'll certainly remain frost free, but we might get down towards 4-6 degrees Celsius in a few spots. As you start off Friday morning then, particularly across central southern areas, it is worth bearing in mind there could be some localised travel issues due to that reduced visibility from all the mist and fog that will be around first thing. Perhaps the best chance of a few brighter spells throughout Friday will be across parts of eastern Scotland, but further towards the west we are going to see this rain band in play for a good portion of the day. But into the afternoon, hopefully, we'll start to see that rain easing off a touch more. It will turn lighter and patchier here. Otherwise, for much of Northern Ireland, England and Wales, really Friday is a very similar situation to today. Widespread grey, overcast skies. A lot of that mist and murk really still lingering around to produce a fairly dull situation. Temperatures, because of that lack of sunshine, are going to be dropping down a bit. We might just skirt into double digits across some parts of Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and northern England. There is going to be very little change on that as we head into Friday evening and the weekend. They're only slowly starting to see a few brighter spells arriving as we head towards Saturday and Sunday. Most notably, though, it is looking to turn more unsettled as we head into the new working week, particularly across Scotland. So it's worth staying up to date with the forecast as we head towards New Year. Bye-bye.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Finished absolutely nowhere.
Welcome back to Merry Christmas Britain. It's time to go through all the latest sports news. Aidan McGee is here with me in the studio. Now, Aidan, it's a big day for Premier League football, isn't it? What matches have we got coming up, and indeed already underway?
Yeah, plenty. One's actually finished, Miriam, this morning, or 12:30 kick-off. Man City against Everton. That finished 1-1, and crucially for City, Erling Haaland missed a chance, or missed a penalty in the second half, which would have won it for City, and it continues a dreadful run for them. All right, they didn't lose, but they're expected to win at home to Everton, who don't travel well to that particular stadium, the Etihad. 1 win in 13 now. They've lost 9 in the last 13. That's as many, Miriam, as they lost in their previous 106 matches. That's the kind of drop-off we're talking about here. These are the Premier League champions. This is the treble winners from 2023. It's absolutely astonishing what's happening. What was interesting was that Pep, the Guardiola, the manager, who's really showing signs of stress and pressure recently, because he's never really been in this position in his career. He's never had this losing run. And we can see pictures of him there for the benefit of our radio listeners, just boarding the coach there. And he brought the players in for training on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. They've got a hotel at their training ground. Now, get this, 80 bedrooms. They have sleep-enhancing wallpaper, and £150,000 was spent on mattresses and pillows. Now, I did a piece in my previous job with a sleep coach, and he told me all the vagaries around what contributes to great sleep. Mattress isn't actually the most crucial thing, actually. He said to me that the most crucial thing is seeing natural light. Also, he was doing sleep consultations with professional players, and he was saying, well, you know, you got the heat on all night, no wonder you're waking up dehydrated.
Yeah.
It was simple things that don't necessarily cost loads of money. Nonetheless, irrespective of what they've spent, it's not worked today because they haven't got the result.
They've paid a big price because they've missed out on Christmas evening with their families.
I know.
No doubt had to eat, you know, chicken breast and rice for lunch or something instead of serving dinner, and they still haven't won.
I know. I mean, look, this, in all seriousness, will annoy some of the players. I know what footballers are like. They treasure their time with their families. I personally would say, get over it. You're earning £300 a week.
And it's such a big day for the fans, isn't it? Because you were telling me earlier that on the continent, footballers have 2 weeks off over Christmas.
Yeah, probably longer.
On Boxing Day.
Longer, yeah. Look, it's quite common to hear overseas managers who work in this country whinge. I say whinge because it's just part of the endurance test. When you come to England, we play on Boxing Day. There are certain vagaries that hit certain leagues, and you just have to put up with them. And they make so much money off the festive programme. It's part of our staple. You look at boxing the other day, right? I put this to Frank Warren, who was the promoter, who's Tyson Fury's manager. We had him on the breakfast show on Saturday. And I said, did you not think boxing missed a trick by not having big fights around Christmas, as we had on Saturday with Fury against Usyk 2? Because it fits nicely into our festive calendar. And he said, yeah, I think we probably did. I mean, we have seen big fights before. It's not the first time, but maybe we should have had more of them, because if football goes big on around Christmas, horse racing, which we'll touch on in a moment, that goes big, darts, why not boxing? And I think the timing is crucial. We expect to feast on sport. We're sitting at home, we're eating food, we want something to watch after we've watched our Christmas film, The Holiday or The Grinch, whatever it is.
Yeah, do you think the travel disruptions will have made a difference today, though? Because lots of train lines aren't running, quite difficult to get to away matches particularly.
Yeah, I mean, look, they try and localise the fixtures, Miriam. I mean, if you look today, Bournemouth against Crystal Palace, that's considered a localised game to kind of minimise the traffic. Yeah, all right, if you're a Palace fan, it's better than going up to Merseyside or to Manchester or whatever, but still, Bournemouth away is 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
I've done it many times. Because I live roughly where Crystal Palace lives. Palace fans live in Bromley. I'd imagine they would spend probably 2.5 hours getting down there. West Ham travelling down to Southampton, very similar journey. Most West Ham fans, I would say, live in Essex, Hertfordshire. They'd have to go down to the south coast there as well. So it's not simple because, you know, you might have 15 teams from up north and only 5 from down the south. So you can't match it up exactly. But with the trains are not even on strike. I mean, we mentioned earlier on, some of them just aren't running. They say they've got engineering works going. Some of these blokes that are driving these trains in a straight line on £93,000 a year, as of a few months ago.
Probably a whole day's work for a footballer, that. Well, we're going to have to leave it there, Aidan, but you are joining me again later.
I am indeed, yeah.
We shall start with the horse racing.
Without doubt.
I know there's lots of news there.
It's a big gallop to the finish.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Well, you're watching Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. There's lots more coming up on today's show, and my panel are going to be joining me again later to discuss all the topics making the news this Boxing Day. Don't go away.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Well, drinkers have been warned about a drop in the quality of French wines after poor weather conditions hit this year's grape harvest. Winemakers across France will make 240 million fewer bottles of wine this year, the country's farming ministry said on Tuesday. So should we think of switching from French to English? I'm joined now by sommelier and founder of Inflorescence Wines, Jacinta Madison-Williams. Hello, Jacinta.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. First of all, let's just think about the poor French.
We should.
Has this been a fairly universal weather catastrophe for France?
It has. Kind of across the board, we're about 22% down on last year's crops, which is quite significant. I think it's like one of the 4 years over the last century that have been this low. So. And
it's affected both quality and quantity?
I would say more so quantity. There's always ways of counteracting quality. It depends if people are desperate to make wine. They can obviously push out more watered down grapes. There's been a lot of rain, if you hadn't noticed. Not only in France, we felt it here too. But lots of frost, supercell hailstorms have completely wiped out some crops. So in some cases, there's nothing to make. In other cases, it's just really watered down grapes and you want to pick earlier to make sure you're avoiding all those rains. But I would say more so it's quantity. But saying that, France is still the biggest producer of wine in the world. It might be taken over by Spain this year, but as a consumer, don't panic. We're not going to run out of wine. And we obviously have lots of lovely wine growing here now in England. So whether we do make a little jump for a bit to English wine, but there's definitely still lots out there.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News. I'm Miriam Cates and it's 3:45 on Boxing Day. Now, in what will surely go down as a significant moment in British political history, Reform UK membership numbers have overtaken the Conservative Party. This is the moment it was announced.
We're there now.
How many more to go?
In fact, we've done it. We're through. We're through. How about that? The official opposition. It's going to be a long...
And of course, the Reform Party are continuing to do well in the polls, with some opinion polls even putting them ahead of Labour, the governing party. So is Nigel Farage destined to enter number 10 at the next election? Well, joining me now from the Isle of Wight, I've got former Conservative MP, former colleague of mine, Bob Seeley. Bob, thank you so much for joining me. Now, membership numbers aren't everything, are they? But this is a big psychological moment for the Conservative Party, isn't it?
I think it's a big hi, Miriam, and happy Christmas to you
Happy
and
Christmas,
all you and listeners. Yeah, look, it's you know, congratulations to Reform. I'm not going to sit here slagging them off. They're doing well and they're picking up because people are disenchanted. We have probably the worst government we're ever going to see in our lifetimes. I think Starmer's a disaster as Prime Minister. Rayner, Reeves, they're all pretty dire, and people are fed up, and Labour are learning all the wrong lessons from the last election. The Conservatives have got a fight in their hands. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But there's a difference between picking up membership on the back of an unpopular government and that translating into policy. And I think there's still an awful long way to go before the next general election. And I'm sure that things will be picking up for the Conservatives in the new year as well. Kemi knows she's got a big job and she's up for it, and so are all of us.
Now, Bob, I think our viewers will absolutely agree that the government is very unpopular. It's done a lot of things that have really angered people and disappointed people who are hoping for a fresh start with Labour. But the question remains, why are these disenfranchised voters joining Reform and not the Conservative Party? Surely that is the question that needs to be answered.
I think because we don't know where those voters come from. Some of them may be disgruntled Tories, but an awful lot of people may be people who wouldn't have joined either of the two political parties. And increasingly, there is evidence to suggest that Reform's future vote may be coming from Labour voters as well. What concerns me as someone who just, you know, loves their country like you, Miriam, is that there is a split in the Conservative vote. I don't believe, I may be proved wrong, but I really don't believe that Nigel Farage is going to be entering Downing Street. They've got 5 MPs now. They got a reasonable showing in the election in terms of percentage votes. But what that did was allow Labour to have this loveless landslide rather than build up a parliamentary base for Reform. I remember the SDP back in the 80s, who were polling in the 30s, were winning some by-elections and yet petered out. And still, because of the way our system works, Miriam, the most likely thing is that Reform will peter out in time, because as much as I like some of these Reform MPs, because they're certainly interesting characters, Richard Tice and I think, who's the other guy who's done a lot? I can't remember his name. Rupert Lowe, I think, has got a lot to say, and they're smart people. But I still think it's a bit of a one-man band when the Conservative Party is very much not that case. Kemi's got to lay out an agenda starting next year. She knows that. And clearly, we need to be fighting every day on social media to make sure that people see what direction we're going in. So there's all to play for. I'm not underestimating the scale of the task. But there's an awful long way to go before the next election, and we need to make sure that we unify the Conservative vote in this country, because otherwise you could see Labour disastrously winning another term on 30% of the vote, which would be awful.
Bob, thank you so much for your time, especially on Boxing Day. Happy Christmas to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Bob Seeley there, former MP for the Isle of Wight. Now, Paula, I know Conservatives would very much like to believe that Reform may peter out or not survive to the next general election, but that seems unlikely, doesn't it?
Yes, I'm very excited about the movement of Reform, and I think they're trying to emulate the MAGA movement, and they're doing it excellently. You know, when you have someone like Nigel Farage, that's an amazing orator, and he's very akin to Donald Trump as well. And you have to think about it as well, when the members here in this country in Reform and the voters, they are very similar to the MAGA movement. They're very powerful, they're very loud, and they're very proud. And he's going all out, and I think he's going to succeed. I mean, he will need a lot of candidates, obviously, and they will need to be thoroughly checked. But, I mean, if we can clone someone like Rupert Lowe, that would be amazing, because he's just, I mean, he's a stellar MP. But I think they can do it. And obviously, TikTok, people on TikTok love Nigel Farage, and Labour did want to put the voting age to 16. If they can do that, that's only going to help Nigel. But, yeah, I mean, I think there'll be a snap election within a year or so. I don't think we'll wait 4 years anyway.
Interesting. Chloe, this news really does highlight the idiosyncrasies of our voting system, because Reform are ahead in the polls of the Conservatives, probably on most polls. They've now got more members, and yet because of the way our first-past-the-post system works, it's still quite possible that they will return, you know, fewer than 100 seats potentially next election, even if they outperform the Conservatives at the ballot box. Do you think it's time to reassess our system?
I think that it maybe is time to have conversations about the first past the post system. We had this general election that we had in July was the most disproportionate general election that we have ever had in terms of how number of votes ties up with number of seats. But realistically, is Keir Starmer going to allow a vote, for example, on should we switch to PR? Of course not. He's obviously done very well in this election out of a first-past-the-post system. And I think Reform have recognised that. I think before the general election, they thought the only way we're ever going to get into number 10 is if we switch to a PR system, and they were talking about it all the time. But now you'll notice in their messaging, they're not really talking about it that much. They've realised we need to do this in a first-past-the-post system. It's going to be a very uphill battle. But now, I mean, this is huge news, them overtaking the Conservatives. Bookies putting Nigel Farage on 30% chance of becoming the next Prime Minister. And I think they're starting to think, you know what, we can do it in the current system. Electoral calculus today, they say that Reform, if there was a general election tomorrow, they get 38 seats. Obviously, a heck of a long way from where they'd need to be to having Farage in number 10, but 38 from 5 at the general election, clearly making big progress.
That's right, but we're focusing on this number of members, which I think hit something like 130,000. Of course, that's a lot of people, but I just want to show viewers at home this chart, which shows the combined membership of all political parties from 1950s until today. And you'll see back there in the 1950s, all the parties together had nearly 4 million members. Now we're well under 1 million, so that's a combination of members of Conservative, Labour, Reform, Lib Dem, all the other parties. So although obviously this is a big number of members for Reform and more than the Conservatives, actually just shows how much we've lost in that kind of political affiliation. And we're in very turbulent times, aren't we, Paula? People are committed to voting for one party today. Will that hold for 4 years? We don't know.
We are in turbulent times, but also still of a cost of living crisis, so people are cutting back on subscriptions, and I think it's £25 to join Reform.
Yes, but I mean, you know, you could have said that in the various times in the 80s and 90s, but really, you know, that drop-off in the 60s is phenomenal.
Yeah, I think Reform, we have to remember as well, the Conservative Party was the oldest political party in the world, so for a new party to beat them already for membership is amazing. And as I say, I have a lot of respect for Nigel Farage, and he gets people excited about politics. And he's learned a lot from the MAGA movement. I mean, it's obvious what's happened. He wants to bring excitement. He wants to be like our Trump. And it's working. People are excited. Even like teenagers talking about politics now. They're following him on TikTok. And even if Starmer doesn't move it down to 16, these 16-year-olds that love him are going to be 18 soon. And if we do have an election in 4 years' time, I think he's going to not walk it, but before then, he definitely needs more Conservative MPs to defect. And what he needs is some of the former Conservative MPs, maybe like yourself, to stand as candidates for Reform.
Indeed. Quick word, do you think there'll be some more tactical voting at the next election?
I mean, there's always going to be tactical voting, especially in a first-past-the-post system. As I said, they've got quite an uphill battle. I think what's interesting with Reform is that you're going to have people from both Labour and the Conservatives, I think, voting for them. They were second to Labour in 98 seats.
Well, we will be
they're going to be going
carrying on this discussion in the next hour. Please don't go away. You're watching Merry Christmas Britain on GB News.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. If you are planning a Boxing Day walk today, then for some of you I can promise dry conditions. That is all thanks to this area of high pressure out in continental Europe that is stretching its way in across much of England and Wales. But further towards the north, we do have this cold front slipping southwards across Scotland and Northern Ireland. So it is a damper and wetter start to the day here with drizzly outbreaks of rain. To the far north of the Northern Isles, we will see some slightly brighter skies throughout today, a few showers to watch out for, but the winds will be a touch lighter today compared to what we did see on Christmas Day itself. This rain band then is going to be in play across quite a lot of areas of Scotland, so really quite damp and dreary, unfortunately. Certainly raincoats will be needed for any outdoor activities here. Hopefully in Northern Ireland it will turn drier into the afternoon, still relatively cloudy. The best chance of seeing some sunshine is going to be across parts of northeastern England, parts of northeast Wales as well. Might just see a few cloud breaks also. Otherwise, it's quite widespread grey skies for many of us. Temperatures generally around 10 or 11 degrees Celsius as our highs. Into this evening and overnight, that rain band is still in play across the far northwest, still quite damp and drizzly here. Elsewhere, it's a cloudy night. Can't rule out some spots of drizzle also over the higher ground sites, fog in there as well. But with all the cloud around, it's certainly not going to be too chilly. Temperatures holding up in mid-single figures at least. On Friday, well, there's not that much deal of a change. You'll see a lot of widespread cloud around grey skies for many of us. Again, a touch of drizzle possible over the highest sites, though the rain band across Scotland will begin to fade out a touch more. The rain here generally turning lighter and patchier. The rest of the brightness across parts of the northern Isles, where here we'll start to see some cooler conditions moving its way in. Is there any chance of some sunshine for other areas? Well, hopefully on Saturday we will start to see more in the way of those sunny spells emerging, but by the time we reach the new working week, it's looking unsettled again. Bye-bye.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Joined by international life coach Cheryl Findlay, who has joined forces with a Liverpool business owner, Kate Hill, of sustainable sportswear brand Lola Star, to empower women and inspire women across the nation. And to celebrate this partnership with the new Lola Star collection, the two will be hosting an exclusive event next Saturday.
The sportswear brand was launched after, well, your story. You lost how much weight?
So 16 stone, which is over £220, which
wow.
I know is quite significant. But during that kind of decade-long journey, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about what it takes to be successful, to be happy, to be well, and to just live an incredible life every day.
Are you giving them goals to work towards or helping them structure their life?
Yeah, so I don't give out goals, absolutely not. It's all about whatever an individual wants. So what we do to begin with is we understand, like, where are you now? Where are you thriving? Where do you feel really happy and excited in your life? And what's lacking? Like, where would you like to feel better? Where would you like to improve? And then we take it from there.
So I'd love to take that on board. I'd love to be my true self and fulfil my potential. So have you got any practical tips on how to do that?
Yeah, so we start with clarity, right? Like, you need to know, it's such a busy, fast-paced world we live in. There's so much sensory overload. You know, it'd be so easy to be distracted. So we need to kind of quiet all that noise down and start with, where do I want to focus? Pick 2 or 3 things. Where do I want to focus? And then we define the goal. What would I like that area of my life to look, not just look like, but feel like? And then we take it from there. So that's where you would start. I actually had a cancer diagnosis in 2019.
Oh.
And I just decided if I was going to be lucky enough to be on the other side of it, I wasn't going to play small anymore.
GB News, the people's...
Welcome back to GB News. It's 4 o'clock on Boxing Day and you're watching Merry Christmas Britain with me, Miriam Cates. Now, the hunt is on. Large crowds are gathering for the traditional Boxing Day hunt. But with campaigners urging the government to ban trail hunting, could this year's event be the last? And the glass industry is warning that the introduction of a new packaging tax could lead to job losses and higher prices for consumers. We'll have an exclusive report from GB News reporter Anna Riley. And it's a big day for Premier League football, with Manchester United hoping to turn their fortunes around and Liverpool looking to extend their lead at the top of the table. I'll be joined by Aidan McGee for all the latest sports news. Earlier today, it was announced that the number of Reform UK members has overtaken the Conservative Party. Is this a sign that Nigel Farage is headed for number 10 after the next general election? Now, please do send your views and comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Plenty more to come in the programme, but first of all, your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after 4 o'clock. Well, the top story this hour, a passenger plane that crashed, killing 38 people, was downed by a Russian air defence system, according to the Reuters news agency. Sources have said this afternoon that the Azerbaijani Airlines flight was hit by a missile, crippling the jet just before it crashed in Kazakhstan. Mobile footage shows the jet in a steep descent, passengers praying as oxygen masks fell inside the cabin and the wreckage engulfed in flames. The Kremlin, though, denies any deliberate action, blaming instead a bird strike, with Azerbaijan demanding that Russia does admit responsibility. 451 migrants crossed the English Channel illegally on Christmas Day, according to official Home Office figures. 6 more small boats carrying at least 250 more people have reached UK waters today. The latest arrivals have been brought to the Border Force Processing Centre in Dover. And with calm weather conditions expected to continue, Border Force says it is on a heightened alert for a potential surge in crossings. A double murder investigation has been launched after 2 women have died following reports of a stabbing in Milton Keynes. Thames Valley Police say the woman, aged 38 and 24, died at the scene in Bletchley on Christmas Day. A teenage boy and a man in his late 20s are also seriously injured but are stable in hospital. A dog was also injured in the incident and was taken to vets but sadly didn't survive. Police say they have arrested a 49-year-old man on suspicion of murder and attempted murder, and he remains in custody. Reform UK's membership has overtaken the Conservatives just months after Nigel Farage's return as leader. The party has now more than 132,000 members. That's a 300% surge since Farage's comeback in June. Younger supporters, cheaper fees and frustrations with the Tories are all driving the growth, as Farage claims that reform is now the future of British politics. Meanwhile, the Conservatives have reported around 120,000 members, but have faced criticism for a lack of direction under Kemi Badenoch. Well, the Reform leader, Nigel Farage, has himself been speaking to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, about that news.
Incredible. Over 15,000 people have joined us and given us their 25 quids over the last 4 days. This is an historic moment when the newest party in British politics overtakes the oldest existing political party in the world. Something is happening. So, of course, I'm delighted.
The government is facing mounting pressure to deliver on its promise to ban trail hunting and... Let me start that one again. The government is facing mounting pressure to deliver on its promise to ban trail hunting as Boxing Day hunts gather across the UK. Campaigners say the practice, which mimics banned fox hunting, is a smokescreen for illegal activity after hundreds of reports of wildlife and public disruption. Labour has pledged tougher laws, while ministers are considering harsher fines and prosecution rules for reckless hunting. But the Countryside Alliance is defending the practice, saying it's essential for rural life. No timeline has yet been given for when the crackdown will take effect. Well, the Reform leader Nigel Farage has been speaking to our Home and Security editor Mark White about that news.
Whether you support fox hunting or not, as I say, has now become the tip of the iceberg in a much bigger issue about the way in which rural communities are being shut out, their opinions are being ignored. And we hear a lot about two-tier Britain. Well, this is very two-tier. If you're in the big cities, you matter. If you're living out in villages like this, increasingly it feels like you don't. And I do think, and we've seen the farming protests taking off around the country, peaceful farming protests. I do think you're going to get Labour MPs representing these seats feeling very twitchy.
And Boxing Day shoppers are avoiding the high street today, with footfall down over 12% compared to last year. Retail parks, though, have fared slightly better, but overall activity across the UK is more than 10% lower than in 2023. Analysts are blaming a shift to online shopping, along with changing habits driven by year-round promotions. Barclays, though, estimates that we will still spend £4.6 billion, but most of it, as in previous years, will be online. Well, our reporter Will Hollis has been on the high street of Nottingham today with more details on what people are spending.
We're expected to see about 22 million people shopping for Boxing Day sales, but only 14 million of those shoppers will actually be real people on the high street. That good chunk of about 8 million people will just be people that will be logging on online, tapping away and making their purchases online, because, as we say, many of the big retailers are staying closed. They would cite that it's because they want people to have more of a family experience, let their staff rest.
Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour with a much more serious face, and Miriam will hopefully have stopped scoffing chocolates.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, Sam, I have actually only had one chocolate so far. You must have had the other two. I won't be having any more. I don't think the panel want any, so you can have them back if you're going to be rude about my chocolate eating habits. Anyway, thousands of people are gathering today across the country to take part in the annual Boxing Day hunt. Now, many rural residents have expressed support for this tradition and the vital role that it does play within their communities. This comes 20 years after Tony Blair's Hunting Act came into force, which banned the hunting of wild animals with dogs in England and Wales. Critics claim that animals are still harmed during some events unintentionally. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, caught up with our very own Nigel Farage at a hunt today.
Those who'll be on horseback is Nigel Farage. How important is this hunt? This is your local hunt. You've been coming for years.
Yeah, decades, certainly 40 years. Have a look around you. Where are all the toffs? You know, the supposed aristocracy. These are just good, ordinary country folk, many working in farming, many for whom the hunt is a big social part of their life, but also the hunt does amazing work, you know, looking after dead livestock, all sorts of things that they do, let alone the whole tradition of doing it. And I think, you know, 20 years ago, the Hunting Act went through, abolishing fox hunting, but this has survived through trail hunting. You know, a scented trail is put out, the hounds follow that, the horses follow the hounds. We've now got a Labour government saying they might even want to ban trail hunting. I mean, you might as well ban people riding horses.
Now, to find out more about this tradition, the Boxing Day hunt, I'm going to speak to an expert on the subject. Director for Hunting at the Countryside Alliance, Polly Portwin, joins me now. Polly, thank you so much for joining me. Of course, this tradition changed significantly 20 years ago when fox hunting was banned. Why are the government now seeking to ban trail hunting when live animals aren't actually involved?
This seems to be an absolute obsession with the Labour Party. I mean, 20 years ago, we had 700 hours of parliamentary time taken up getting the Hunting Act onto the statute books. And hunts adapted, they changed their ways, they're now hunting a trail, which is what the government wanted us to do. They didn't want us out chasing live quarry. And now they don't seem satisfied with that. Another attack on the countryside. And this is completely at odds with the priorities of people in rural communities and, you know, the countryside as a whole. And yes, they seem rather obsessed. And here we are 20 years later. Even Tony Blair in his memoirs said that, I think it's in 2010, that the fox hunting ban and the Hunting Act were things that he regrets, one of the things he regrets the most during his time as Prime Minister.
Of course, campaigners would say that although foxes aren't actively being hunted now, or shouldn't be, some wild animals are still hurt accidentally in these chases if the dogs do catch a scent of a live animal. Is that something that's frequent? Can it be avoided?
It does happen occasionally. I mean, look, a lot of people think, you know, they see people out in the countryside dressed very traditionally like they used to with an old, pre-ban outfits. You know, we retained our heritage to ensure that we show respect for our landowners and we make sure that we could survive for 20 years and 20 years ahead of us now. And if you take your dog out into the countryside, you can disturb wildlife. And It's the same with a pack of hounds. Just because people see wildlife disturbed doesn't mean that it's being pursued or chased by a pack of hounds. There have been occasions where, unfortunately, incidents have happened. And there have also been incidents where people have been prosecuted for illegal activity. But the Hunting Act is working. People are being prosecuted under the Hunting Act. And that's what the law's there for. We're complying with the law. There's 12,000 days hunting per season takes place, with over 200 packs of hounds going out twice a week at least, some 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4 a week. So there's 12,000 days a year. And if there was, chaos in the countryside, it would be demonstrated. It's not. There are a handful of prosecutions that have taken place over the last 20 years. And people are just going out, enjoying access to the countryside, following the hounds, and enjoying a lawful, legitimate pursuit that is good for their physical, mental health, and gives them access to fresh air. And, they can walk, they can ride a horse. It's beneficial to them.
Now, of course, fox hunting or trail hunting is a large part of our heritage in the countryside, but it's not just heritage, is it? There's an economic value to this as well. What kind of livelihoods does hunting support throughout the year?
Well, obviously, you've got the people who are employed professionally to look after the hounds and the horses. They work in kennels, they've got their homes and their livelihoods are at stake. These are people who do this as their career. And it's them that we are obviously, and the hounds, we're trying to retain a form of packs of hounds that we can keep going out in the countryside. Trail hunting suits that, it fits that, and it enables everyone to continue. Still got 200 packs of hounds, I say, across the countryside that are registered in England and Wales. And it's them that we're looking to make sure that they have got a future, because it's their homes, it's their jobs, it's their livelihoods, it's their lives. And it goes beyond just those directly employed as well. You've got, beyond that, you've got the farriers, you've got the horse box merchants, you've got the feed merchants. It goes way beyond just those that are employed directly.
So, Polly, do you think that the Labour Party will be successful in banning trail hunting? Will they make parliamentary time for it, or are they just paying lip service for activists here?
They're having a war with the countryside. We've heard what they've been doing with the farmers, but it is not a priority. We did some polling recently, and we asked 2,000 people what their top 3 priorities were. Fox hunting, trail hunting. Out of those 6,000 responses, 3 of them was mentioned once. It is not a priority. It really isn't. People care about the NHS, they care about education, they care about the roads, they care about immigration. Trail hunting is not a priority, and the Labour government should learn something from their previous 700 hours of parliamentary time spent on this issue.
Polly Portman from the Countryside Alliance, thank you so much for joining me, and happy Christmas. Now, still with me in the studio is my panel for today, broadcaster Paula London and political commentator Chloe Dobbs. Paula, this is a war on the countryside, isn't it, from the Labour Party? Under the guise of, animal rights, they're trying to ban what is a very important tradition from our heritage.
I don't think it's very important, really. I don't like foxes. I was telling you earlier, a fox murdered my first pet called Mr. Rabbit. He was in the bottom of the garden, minded his own business, and then a fox broke into the cage and murdered him. So that upset me. So for a very long time, I really hated foxes. But I don't think they should be hunted. So I'm glad fox hunting is banned. But I still think it's very predatory. The hounds are so vicious and, and they are actually killing other animals. So I am an equestrian. I've had 3 horses. I used to do show jumping, polo, and also, what did I do? Cross country. But I would never do hunting. And I just don't like these dogs, because I love dogs and I see them as cute pets. These dogs are just, they're very vicious, they're very predatory, they're trying to find kill. So I don't think that's exciting. For me, when I go out riding, I haven't done it for a few years, I would hate to be with a whole pack of hounds that are looking for prey, because that's what it is. And yeah, I wouldn't go out of my way to ban what they're doing now with the scent, but I just don't think it's very cool. I think some people think it's quite cool, very old school and posh to do, but yeah.
Chloe, Labour and activists would argue that, as Paula said, animals are getting harmed unnecessarily. Do you think that's reason enough to end this tradition?
I don't think so. I think that, there's a lot of double standards and hypocrisy when you've got the same people who say, well, happily eat a factory farm piece of meat every single day, an animal that's suffered not just at the end of its life, but constant and horrible conditions. They happily do that every day, but then they're worried about, a few foxes occasionally getting killed during this, traditional thing that they do on Boxing Day. I don't think it's cool. I have no interest in hunting. It sounds pretty boring to me, but it this just seems like a waste of time for the Labour Party. They probably think it's an easy win because banning something doesn't cost you any money, and you can say, oh, I'm doing something as the government, just like Rishi Sunak decided at the last minute, oh, let's try and ban smoking and disposable vapes because that's an easy tick to say that we've done something. But I don't think that this is going to help them because it just feeds into this idea that you've got a metropolitan elite Labour Party that's out of touch with the countryside. The inheritance tax on farmers, that's been very unpopular, and this is just going to disillusion voters even more. So I don't know what they're thinking with this.
Well, doesn't it cut to the heart of the difference between what it means to be a Conservative and what it means to be a Progressive? Because being a Conservative is all about preserving the links to the past. Now, some of them may seem obscure in the modern world, but actually the fact that we have that link to the past, that we have those traditions and those roles and those livelihoods and that reason for the countryside and some of the rural jobs, you know, that is so important if you're a Conservative. If you're a Progressive, you just look back at all our historical traditions and think, well, it's not modern, let's get rid of it. Isn't that the problem with progressivism?
Well, it's very different because a lot of people say could be Conservative, but they're very liberal, obviously the One Nation Conservatives.
I don't think you can be Conservative and Liberal at the same time.
Well, that's what happened. That's why Conservative lost, the election.
Because the party split between Conservatives and Liberals.
Yeah, but being split means you're not a true Conservative. A lot of people should have been the Liberal Democrats rather than being the Conservative Party, hence why, the election was lost. So, I mean, even myself, I'm right-wing, but some things, when it comes to trans and gay rights, I have trans friends, I'm very soft on those things. I believe people should live how they want to live. So that wouldn't be a Tory thing to say. That would make me liberal, but I'm not a liberal.
How can you be a Conservative?
Because I'm a human being and we're all different. I'm not a robot, so I'm not going to just tick every box and be like, I believe all of those things for right wing. So you can be, not left and right. I mean, I'm not a politician, so it's fine for me.
I mean, we've started our fox hunting, obviously, but we've got into politics, of course. But this is a really interesting debate, and I think these are some of the questions that the Reform Party is going to have to answer, because they've told the Conservatives you lost the election because you weren't Conservative enough, and yet there are plenty of people in the Reform Party who have views that would not be classically Conservative.
Well, I think that you shouldn't, if you're going to call yourself a Conservative, as Paula says, that we'll all have some things which we may be considered more liberal on. You shouldn't just maintain a certain viewpoint just because it's old, right? There are not, I hope there are not many people who call themselves Conservatives who say, hate homosexuals because they're like, oh, well, back in the day we didn't like them and we're called Conservatives, so we just got to keep on doing it. That doesn't make sense. There will always be ideas, even if you call yourself Conservatives, that you decide to change. The Reform Party, yes, they're going to have to try and define themselves over the next few years, but I don't think to win over voters they need to detail out super exactly every single thing. They know, we know from the Brexit campaign that just having a few good policies, obviously they're speaking about immigration and whatnot, to focus on is what's going to win over voters.
But of course, that was a referendum on a single issue, not a general election. Anyway, we shall see. More from the panel later. But time now for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to become our biggest ever winner with an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Incredible sum of money, and it could make your new year the best year yet. Here are all the details you need for a chance to make it yours.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British Giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays? A brand new car? Home improvements? Or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? £50,000 is an amazing amount of money, and it could be all yours. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome back. You're still watching Merry Christmas Britain on GB News, and the glass industry is warning that the introduction of a new packaging tax could lead to job losses. Our reporter went to investigate.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here. We're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Phil Kearsey is bringing a new flavour to the Michelin-starred restaurant Pied à Terre as he becomes its new executive head chef. Customers can expect a menu that showcases modern British cooking accompanied by classical French roots, which uses hyper-seasonal ingredients. What are hyper-seasonal ingredients? That's an interesting phrase.
It's more about just reacting to the seasonality of everything. We like to change the menu all the time. So basically, I surround myself with the best suppliers, and they tell me what's amazing at the moment, and then we try and celebrate that in the restaurant in many different forms, using taste, texture, and technique, and just try and celebrate something as humble as a broccoli stem or a cauliflower, using absolutely everything, and making sure we've got an ever-changing menu. So letting the seasons dictate, so it's never boring and we never get menu fatigue.
OK, your career has taken you around the world a bit.
Yeah.
For example, you were in the United States. What did you learn there?
So, well, every chef I've worked for, it's about to take something from. A lot of chefs will go places and just stay in one establishment and get to the top, and then that's it. I've kind of then went to another chef to learn completely different things. That's the brilliant thing, to be able to surround myself with such amazing chefs throughout my career, because I've learned different things from all of them. And you find out 5 different ways to do something, and you find the way that you like it the best. And it's also about understanding it takes a while to understand how the restaurant is, going through the history of all these amazing chefs that have been before me, the style, because it needs to make sense. You wouldn't have a dish that should be at the Fat Duck and then a dish that should be at the Waterside, you know. You need to make sure that it all makes sense and it goes together with the decor, the service, the wine serving. And so we want to be the restaurant, not that does a little bit of everything, we want to be the best French restaurant in London, you know.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching Merry Christmas Britain on GB News with me, Miriam Cates, and it is 23 minutes past 4 on Boxing Day. Now, Britain's glass industry is warning that the introduction of a new packaging tax could lead to job losses and higher prices for consumers. Our reporter Anna Riley investigates.
Shattering the UK glass sector. That's what British Glass says will happen under the government's new packaging tax. It comes into force in April and moves the cost of waste collection and sorting from councils to producers. And the heavier the container, the higher the levy.
Brands, retailers and even the consumer will face higher fees in glass. For example, if you take a 500mm beer bottle, that potentially could have 10, 15 pence of extra cost put onto it because of this EPR tax. So this could push consumers away from glass into less recyclable materials, all based on weight. We believe that EPR should be really driving recyclability, so encouraging those materials that are recyclable, not encouraging us to go to the lowest cost option.
Brewers are also warning that British ales are at risk from glass bottle tax. Timothy Taylor's in Keighley mainly supply beer to pubs, but also sell bottled beer into the grocery industry.
The net cost of council recycling is moving to us. The government just seemed to think that business is this bottomless pit. The assumption initially was almost that we would absorb these costs. Well, I'm sorry, but, you know, a bottled beer business is a pretty low-margin business. There's just no way that producers in the industry can absorb that.
With the additional costs incurred for businesses by the budget, there are fears for the future of the pub industry.
I know from our own pub, Woolly Sheep up in Skipton, our costs are going to go up by over £60,000 just for that one pub, between national insurance, living wage, and also the reduction in the rates discount that we get. Now again, that's a healthy pub, but there are loads of pubs run by husband and wives or business partners that are marginal. Next summer into the autumn, you're going to see a lot of pubs closing, and that's awful for the people running the business, but it impacts us because that's fewer outlets for us to kind of put forward our award-winning ales.
The government say its new packaging tax will create a £10 billion investment in the recycling sector over the next decade and see packaging producers, rather than the taxpayer, covering the costs of managing waste. Anna Riley, GB News.
Now, still with me on my Boxing Day panel to discuss this, I've got broadcaster Paula London and political commentator Chloe Dobbs. Now, Chloe, as I understand it, this measure has been brought in to try and get producers to cover in full the costs of recycling their packaging, which includes collecting it, transporting it and recycling it. But the problem is, because glass is so heavy, it obviously costs more to transport. So the glass producers are going to end up paying an awful lot more than, say, plastic producers. Do you think this is just another example of kind of net zero policies gone mad?
Well, I mean, this just doesn't seem very well thought through. When did we start having a war on glass? What happened to the war on plastic? You know, glass, sure, it's heavier, but at least it gets recycled more. When you put your plastic in the recycling, after you've spent all that time washing out your yoghurt pots and whatnot, 90% of it actually just ends up in landfill and doesn't actually get recycled. This is surely, if you start charging people based on weight, you're just going to end up with more plastic packaging. And then, you know, the point about the pubs there, most pubs, their staff are on minimum wage. We've got a huge minimum wage hike. That's going to really affect pubs. And then you've got the hike on national insurance and whatnot. A lot of pubs are really going to struggle. And then just slapping this on top as well, it just, again, feeds into this narrative that Labour are completely out of touch with the small business owners in this country.
Paula, so much environmental policy seems to be very disjointed, and somebody has an idea somewhere, oh, let's try and increase the amount of glass used. Someone says, oh, let's put a tax on unrecycled plastic. You know, and then we have this kind of huge landscape of conflicting policies, and actually we're ending up importing more plastic from abroad and with a bigger carbon footprint than before.
Yeah, I don't buy into net zero scam at all. I remember in the 70s we were going to have an ice age, and then next year we were supposed to have global warming, and I just think it's pretty rubbish. But I'm worried about what Labour are doing. I think they're being pretty sinister because they always seem to want to attack hospitality businesses, mainly pubs, which obviously British men and women love to have pubs. We know we love going to a pub after work, and we've been doing it for centuries. So I don't know why they're doing that. And obviously their budget was very anti-growth. It's going to be a big problem with the zero-hour contracts because they want to prevent people being employed on those. And they also want to make employers have to pay their staff sick pay immediately once they join. And I think they're almost taking the mickey out of publicans when they said 1p off a pint. That was a joke to people. I think it's rather sinister. He still seems to be hitting the pubs a lot and hospitality. And that business is really suffering, especially since COVID. And it's a traditional British pastime, the pub. I love my local pub, and a lot of British people do. But maybe some of his electorate don't. So maybe he's trying to do this to please them. Who knows?
Now, there was a time, Chloe, when certainly political parties thought that they had to seem environmental and pro-green policies in order to get votes. But do you think the tide is turning now? Do you think people are becoming more sceptical? Maybe not about looking after the environment. Most people want to do that. But more sceptical about the effectiveness of these net zero policies?
I mean, absolutely. You've clearly seen policies like the closing down of the Tata Steel Works. People can clearly see that this just makes no sense, and it is the government trying to virtue signal. That specific case, it just means we're going to have to ship it in from abroad. If we're not in a position where we are self-sufficient with our green energy and whatnot, all it's going to do is be worse for the environment. We all live on one planet. Doesn't matter where you pollute, it still all adds to the same atmosphere. a lot of the policies don't make sense. I do care about the environment, but I do kick off when I see us wasting time and money on things that are clearly there just a virtue signal and aren't really going to make any fundamental difference.
Chloe, Paula, thank you so much. Look forward to continuing that discussion. Of course, a brilliant point. There are no borders in the atmosphere, so it doesn't matter which country is producing the carbon. Very good point. Now, back to more Christmassy things. One of my favourite traditions at this time of year is the traditional carol service. Here's the Vocal Zone Voice Studio Choir from South Derbyshire with Silent Night.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, shepherds quail at the sight, glory stream from heaven afar, heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Saviour is born. Christ the Saviour is born. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams thy holy face, with the dawn of saving grace. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth, Jesus, Lord, at thy birth.
Absolutely beautiful and so lovely to see children singing too. Well, this is Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. Don't get away because there's lots more coming up on today's show, including all the Boxing Day sport.
4:33, the top story from the newsroom this hour. Well, US officials have confirmed that there are early indications that a Russian air defence system may have downed a Azerbaijani aircraft, killing 38 people. Sources say that flight was hit by a missile, crippling the jet before it crashed. Mobile footage also shows the jet in a steep descent, passengers praying as oxygen masks fell inside the cabin and the wreckage engulfed in flames. The Kremlin, though, denies any deliberate action, blaming a bird strike instead, while Azerbaijan is demanding that Russia does admit responsibility. 451 migrants crossed the English Channel illegally on Christmas Day, according to official Home Office figures. 6 more small boats carrying at least 250 migrants have reached UK waters today. The latest arrivals have been brought to the Border Force Processing Centre at Dover Harbour. With calm weather conditions expected to continue, Border Force says it is on heightened alert for a potential surge in crossings. A double murder investigation has been launched after 2 women have died in Milton Keynes following reports of a stabbing there. Thames Valley Police's major crime unit say the women, aged 38 and 24, died at the scene in Bletchley on Christmas Day. A teenage boy and a man in his late 20s are also seriously injured, but currently stable in hospital. A dog was also injured in the incident and was taken to the vets, but sadly didn't survive. Police have arrested a 49-year-old man on suspicion of murder and attempted murder, and he remains in police custody. And Reform UK's membership has overtaken the Tories just months after Nigel Farage's return as the party's leader. Now, more than 132,000 people are members of the party, a 300% surge since Farage's comeback in June. Younger supporters, cheaper fees and frustrations with the Conservatives are driving that growth. The Tories, though, have last reported around 120,000 members in November, but have faced criticism for a lack of direction under Kemi Badenoch. Well, the Reform leader, Nigel Farage, has been speaking to us here on GB News about those figures.
Incredible. Over 15,000 people have joined us and given us their 25 quids over the last 4 days. This is an historic moment when the newest party in British politics overtakes the oldest existing political party in the world. Something is happening. So, of course, I'm delighted.
Those are the latest headlines for now. I will be back with you at 5 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good afternoon. This is your latest GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Dull, damp, dreary, all words that sum up the forecast for many of us over the next few days. Whilst high pressure is in charge, extending in from parts of continental Europe, there is a lot of cloud trapped underneath this high, producing our anticyclonic gloom. Quite misty and murky scenes into this evening and overnight, particularly across Wales, central southern areas of England. Band of rain just pushing across the far north of Scotland, skirting into the Highlands, the Outer Hebrides and towards Orkney as well, quite damp and drizzly here. With all the cloud around though, temperatures won't be dropping too far at least. We'll certainly remain frost free, but we might get down towards 4-6 degrees Celsius in a few spots. As you start off Friday morning then, particularly across central southern areas, it is worth bearing in mind there could be some localised travel issues due to that reduced visibility from all the mist and fog that will be around first thing. Perhaps the best chance of a few brighter spells throughout Friday will be across parts of eastern Scotland, but further towards the west we are going to see this rain band in play for a good portion of the day. But into the afternoon, hopefully, we'll start to see that rain easing off a touch more. It will turn lighter and patchier here. Otherwise, for much of Northern Ireland, England and Wales, really Friday is a very similar situation to today. Widespread grey, overcast skies. A lot of that mist and murk really still lingering around to produce a fairly dull situation. Temperatures, because of that lack of sunshine, are going to be dropping down a bit. We might just skirt into double digits across some parts of Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and northern England. There is going to be very little change on that as we head into Friday evening and the weekend. They're only slowly starting to see a few brighter spells arriving as we head towards Saturday and Sunday. Most notably, though, it is looking to turn more unsettled as we head into the new working week, particularly across Scotland. So it's worth staying up to date with the forecast as we head towards New Year. Bye-bye.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News. It's 20 to 5 on Boxing Day, and I'm Miriam Cates, and it's time to go through all the latest sports news with Aidan McGee. Thank you for joining me again, Aidan. We said we'd start this time with horse racing, some big races today.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the biggest one, the stellar one for Boxing Day is always the King George VI chase at Kempton Park. That got underway at 2:30. Quite a surprise winner, a 7-1 shot, Banbridge, ridden by jockey Paul Townend, trained by Joseph O'Brien. That's rattled in with a win at the final fence. That's really unusual. And it hadn't actually won across 3 miles since April 2022. And it usurped I'm going to mention my tip, which was Spillane's Tower.
Did it do well?
It finished 5th. So, all right, which is nowhere. You're not going to win anything on each way bet if it finishes 5th. But that was a 10-3 shot. But well done to everyone there, and a huge day of racing. I mean, there were meetings at Aintree, Fontwell Park, Market Raisins, Sedgefield up in the northeast there, Wetherby, Yorkshire, Wincanton, and Down Royal. Down Royal was one that my dad used to attend when he was a little boy over in Downpatrick, about 20 miles outside Belfast. So I've good memories of him telling me stories about that. But Wincanton was the only flat one. The rest of them were hunt races. And it's been a tough time, as Nigel explained throughout the day, just for racing fraternity as a whole. Cruelty to animals, Animal Rising, one of those protest groups who've tried to sabotage the Grand National. Don't know if they plan to do it again next year. We'll wait and see. But yeah, as much a part of the festive feast, if you like, the schedule as football, and as we mentioned earlier on, boxing. Yeah, well, on the football, a massive day for the Premier League. Huge, yeah, exactly. It's we've got some matches in play at the moment. We heard about City drawing with Everton 1 each. Chelsea lead Fulham by 1-0. Newcastle leading Aston Villa by 1-0 as well. We've got games tonight as well. Wolverhampton Wanderers against Man United 5:30. Leicester travel to Liverpool for 8 o'clock. West Ham just took the lead down at Southampton as well. And I don't know if I mentioned it a moment ago, but Forest are beating Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest are beating Tottenham at home by 1-0.
Very good.
Alanga scored there. So yeah, we're good. As I say, it doesn't just stop here with Boxing Day. We've got games over. I mean, we've got games over the weekend, and on Sunday there'll be New Year's Eve. Then the FA Cup starts in the first few days, and so you do get overseas managers complaining a little bit
they don't get
about the schedule. Yeah, I mean, look, there is science behind it, Miriam, because the more games players compete in over a short, sustained period of time, and they are highly tuned athletes. That's why they earn 300 grand a week, some of them. It does have it leads them into what we know as the red zone. I don't know if you've seen it in training. You might see a player wearing, in training, one of these like tiny little vests over their shoulders, right? They're GPS trackers, but they also feed into a laptop like you've got in front of you just there, and a physio or a sports scientist off to the side of the pitch can actually monitor their overall health of their body in play. It's extraordinary. Amazing. It's in advent over the last sort of 10 years or so. They weren't able to use it during matches previously. It was only during training. That's changed now. You can actually see it during a match. So you can see 75th minute, the right winger there is just moving into the red zone. He's getting a bit tired. He's getting a bit knackered, cream crackered if you like. And he might have to come off, and it stops them getting injuries. And that's why we should see a few. And is this where you get all the really interesting data about how many kilometres a player has run? How it's accelerated. It's extraordinary what they can find out. In fact, I've known some managers say to me, "Look, I'll tell you what I know about the system, or what I'm allowed to tell you. I can't tell you everything because it is because some clubs might have a better system than another one. I mean, in reality, they probably all use a similar one, to be honest with you. Because what happens is that one coach moves to another, they then say, "Oh, this is what we're using over there. Let's buy one of those." And for a football club to invest £1 million or whatever in a new system is not a great deal of money to a Premier League club. Extremely well paid, but very fit athletes as well. They do work for their money, don't they? Highly tuned. As I say, when we see them even getting fouled for a free kick or a penalty, you think, oh, he's hardly touched him. But then you look close in, it's not possible to see all the time how quickly they're running. So when the quicker somebody's running, it doesn't take long. A lot of momentum. It doesn't take long to knock them off stride, and that's what can prove decisive. But there's a whole science behind football, and it's not just about this number of games. We want in this number of days. We want to have time off. There is science behind it. Well. Absolutely. Aidan, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll see you again before the end of the programme. You're watching Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show, so please don't go anywhere.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Christmas canapé offers partygoers a small treat that staves off hunger and soaks up the fizz. Founder and host of Crazy Sexy Food, Hannah Harley-Young, joins me now with a toothsome selection. Lovely to see you, Hannah.
You too.
Origin of the word canapé?
Yes, French. Sort of from the, of course, from sort of the 1800s. It means sofa. So it's sort of playing on the analogy of someone sitting or lying on a sofa. It is about the garnish, traditionally sitting on a piece of stale bread or pastry. Obviously, it's evolved over the years. I don't have any stale bread for you, don't worry. But the idea is that it's something sort of garnish, something exciting sitting on a vehicle that you can put in your mouth in 1 or 2 bites.
It's obviously post-war. What is it? Is it 60s or 70s? How long have we been eating these things?
I would say around about then. And I think what's interesting, I mean, I always look towards even the 80s, a little bit sort of later on, where it's, where you sort of have that, sort of the classic vol au vent, which was, you know, a little bit dry, a little bit tasteless. And I think that's why I've brought a real selection for you to show you how far we've come. Another traditional one, obviously, being your pigs in blankets. I'm going to hold off for a second before I choke. Another thing that I have to say about canapes, there are a few little tips that I must give people super quickly. Make sure they're small. 1 or 2 bites. When you're at a party, you're standing, you've got a glass in one hand, then you need to hold it. There. OK, I would have preferred a glass of wine, but, you know, I can't stand these canapes where I have to put the glass down in order to eat the food. I want to do it all at once.
I couldn't agree more. You should never eat more than you can lift.
Exactly.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News. You're watching Merry Christmas Britain with me, Miriam Cates. Now, for most of us, Christmas means precious time with family and some much-needed time off work. But for staff working in hospital, accident and emergency departments, it can be one of the toughest times of the year. From alcohol-fuelled accidents and devastating injuries to heart-wrenching family crises, A&E can often become the front line of Christmas chaos. Every shift tests the will of medical staff with lives hanging in the balance and often no time to pause. So should we do more to support our NHS staff at Christmas? Well, joining me on my panel today to discuss this is broadcaster Paula London and political commentator Chloe Dodds. Now, Paula, the doctors and nurses and administrative staff working in the NHS over Christmas do a phenomenal job, don't they? And I was reading that actually Christmas Day is one of the least busy days of the year because you'd only go to hospital on Christmas Day if you really had to, but Boxing Day, sadly, is very different.
Yeah, I think Christmas Day is if you had too much to drink and maybe you suspected you broke your leg or your arm, or turkey poisoning. You know, sometimes supermarkets, they sell birds and then they're too old or what have you, and then some people get turkey poisoning or alcohol poisoning. And also, it's not a very nice thing to talk about, but some people, you know, take other things like narcotics, whatever, over Christmas. They could have overdoses, so they will be in hospital. But normally it's quieter around Christmas, but New Year's Eve is a whole different ballgame. I've seen like reality shows, the amount of people going in when they're drunk and very angry. So I really feel sorry for the NHS staff because they're not paid to be abused by people. And I don't know why anyone would abuse someone that's trying to help you, but that happens all the time when people are drunk.
I mean, there are some shocking stories, Chloe, about what happens when people have been hospitalised with alcohol-related injuries. And, does it beg the question, should we be doing something about this? Not just the NHS staff, but the cost to the taxpayer of these really, avoidable accidents, injuries, and often, sometimes violence as well.
Well, you're always going to have people ending up in hospital because of alcohol. I mean, what's the alternative, right? Do we ban alcohol or something like that? Of course.
Well, the alternative is make people pay for their treatment.
Potentially. I mean, I know, a lot of taxis that, for example, they'll charge people if they're sick in the taxi and whatnot. I think you'd get into murky territory. It would get very complicated if you try and decipher between this is an accident that's your fault versus this is one that isn't. Maybe people not going because they can't afford it. I do think maybe we need better education of teenagers about drinking and whatnot. I think we do have a cultural thing in this country where when people drink, they drink really hard and they go right to the edge. Whereas in America, people happily just have 1 or 2 drinks and they're quite civilised about it. So,
I just want to remind me for a while. There wasn't that civilised.
But,
and in LA, oh my God, yeah.
But I just want to say thank you to all of the people who worked on Christmas Day in the NHS and in the police and everywhere else, because, it's sad to have to say to your family, sorry, I can't see you and enjoy the Christmas dinner and the presents because I've got to work today. So sadly, someone's got to do the shift, and it's very kind of those people to offer their time to do that.
But with people with genuine illnesses and the symptoms that they're concerned about, it also can be a problem that people don't seek help early enough because they don't want to ruin Christmas for their family. So you hear stories of people ending up in hospital on Christmas Day, having left it far too late with chest pain or something like that. People still need to seek help at Christmas if they've got genuine problems.
Or maybe if they've been in pain for quite a while and then they're talking about their illness over Christmas and some of their relatives are telling them, go now if it's that bad. So maybe that's happening. Or maybe some people are over-exerting themselves, having really rich food and they're getting pains in their chest. So, I mean, that's not very good. But if you need a doctor, just call one.
And
go.
Exactly. But of course, the other factor is that, for understandable reasons, GPs are closed over Christmas. A lot of pharmacies are closed over Christmas. So people end up in A&E when actually, on a normal day, they would
go to Boots, maybe.
Exactly. But it's going to be a big year for the NHS, isn't it? It's under, huge pressure. More and more people seeking help. It does potentially have more money coming in for the Labour government, but is this going to be enough to reform the health service?
I don't think so, especially when you've got nearly 1 million people a year net migration coming in the country. The government can do the best they can to build as many homes and increase the capacity of the NHS they can, but I don't think it's going to make that much material difference to people's lives if we've got huge levels of immigration, to be honest.
But I mean, of course, immigration is a factor in pressure on our public services. But actually, the average age of people coming over from immigration is actually relatively low. And more of a problem is the fact that the population is ageing. We've got amazing life expectancy now compared to, say, 50 years ago. But of course, that puts itself huge pressure on the NHS.
Well, I've actually seen something quite terrible on Twitter. And a lot of people were really alarmed and angry. I was actually angry. A lot of NHS staff, nurses, were actually in hotels dealing with the young asylum seekers, making sure they were OK. So they effectively skipped the queue and they, it's like a home service, I mean, it's unbelievable what's happening. So
there just aren't enough NHS staff, basically,
But the staff are not there in the hospital to deal with that ageing population, especially over this time of year. They're actually in hotels helping these young guys.
Of course, it's not a quick problem to fix. We have got a lot of NHS staff from other countries, and you can question the ethics of that. Why are we taking highly trained people from countries in the world that are much poorer than our own, taking them away from their health services and not training up our own? But we can't fix this quickly, can we?
There are no easy answers, but I do think that we have to have difficult conversations about how we fix it. You can't just keep throwing money at it. That's not going to work. Wes Streeting is one of the few people in the Labour government that I have got a bit of time for, because he is talking about actually changing the way that the system works. Whether that actually comes to fruition and he manages to pull it off, I don't know. But all I can say is I'm very grateful that I'm a young person right now. If I was an old person, I'd be terrified because, some of the waiting times for an ambulance, if you're having a heart attack, are just scary. Your chances of survival are not great in this country.
I know someone who had a huge heart attack and was told to call a taxi because it would be so long till the...
And that affects everyone, whether you're rich or poor, with private medical insurance or not, and people need to remember that.
But that's the interesting thing. In other countries, if you do have private medical insurance, you get a rebate from... your state cover, isn't that...
Well, you do in this country as well. If you're in hospital and you're in NHS, not private, they will give you some money per day that you stay.
Yes, OK, yes. So
not a lot, but you will do,
Well, it's going to be a big year for the NHS, certainly, one way or the other. But thank you so much to everybody who is working those shifts in hospitals, because you do an extraordinary job. And no doubt you don't get quite as nice Christmas dinner in hospital, but thank you for doing it. Anyway, there's plenty more coming up on Merry Christmas Britain, so please don't go anywhere. You're watching GB News with me, Miriam Cates.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. If you are planning a Boxing Day walk today, then for some of you I can promise dry conditions. That is all thanks to this area of high pressure out in continental Europe that is stretching its way in across much of England and Wales. But further towards the north, we do have this cold front slipping southwards across Scotland and Northern Ireland. So it is a damper and wetter start to the day here with drizzly outbreaks of rain. To the far north of the Northern Isles, we will see some slightly brighter skies throughout today, a few showers to watch out for, but the winds will be a touch lighter today compared to what we did see on Christmas Day itself. This rain band then is going to be in play across quite a lot of areas of Scotland, so really quite damp and dreary, unfortunately. Certainly raincoats will be needed for any outdoor activities here. Hopefully in Northern Ireland it will turn drier into the afternoon, still relatively cloudy. The best chance of seeing some sunshine is going to be across parts of northeastern England, parts of northeast Wales as well. Might just see a few cloud breaks also. Otherwise it's quite widespread grey skies for many of us. Temperatures generally around 10 or 11 degrees Celsius as our highs. Into this evening and overnight, that rain band is still in play across the far northwest, still quite damp and drizzly here. Elsewhere, it's a cloudy night. Can't rule out some spots of drizzle also over the higher ground sites, fog in there as well. But with all the cloud around, it's certainly not going to be too chilly. Temperatures holding up in mid-single figures at least. On Friday, well, there's not that much deal of a change. You'll see a lot of widespread cloud around grey skies for many of us. Again, a touch of drizzle possible over the highest sites, though the rain band across Scotland will begin to fade out a touch more. The rain here generally turning lighter and patchier. The rest of the brightness across parts of the Northern Isles, where here we'll start to see some cooler conditions moving its way in. Is there any chance of some sunshine for other areas? Well, hopefully on Saturday we will start to see more in the way of those sunny spells emerging, but by the time we reach the new working week, it's looking unsettled again. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock.
I say, don't hesitate, do it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, you're watching GB News. It's 5 o'clock on Boxing Day, and this is Merry Christmas Britain with me, Miriam Cates. Are you heading out this Boxing Day? Be prepared for very busy roads, packed stations and bustling airports. We're here to help you navigate the chaos and find the best routes for your post-Christmas getaway. I'm going to be joined soon by travel expert Simon Calder to discuss this more. And the glass industry is warning that the introduction of a new packaging tax could lead to job losses and higher prices for consumers. We'll have an exclusive report from GB News reporter Anna Riley. And it's a big day in the Premier League, with Manchester United looking to turn their fortunes around and Liverpool hoping to extend their lead at the top of the table. I'll be joined by Aidan McGee. And earlier today, the Reform Party has overtaken the Conservative Party in terms of membership numbers. Is this a sign that the leader, Nigel Farage, could be destined for number 10 after the next election? Well, please do send your views and comments to gbnews.com/your say. Plenty more to come, but first of all, your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. The top story tonight. Well, US officials say there are early indications that a passenger plane that crashed, killing 38 people, was downed by a Russian air defence system. Sources say the Azerbaijani Airlines flight was hit by a missile, crippling the jet before it crashed in Kazakhstan. Mobile footage shows the jet in a steep descent, passengers praying as oxygen masks fell in the cabin and the wreckage engulfed in flames. The Kremlin denies any deliberate action, instead blaming a bird strike, but Azerbaijan is demanding that Russian authorities admit the responsibility. 451 migrants crossed the English Channel illegally on Christmas Day, according to official figures from the Home Office. 6 more small boats carrying at least 250 migrants have also reached UK waters today. The latest arrivals have been brought to the Border Force Processing Centre in Dover. And with calm weather conditions expected to continue, Border Force says it is on heightened alert for potential surges in further crossings. A double murder investigation has been launched after 2 women have died in Milton Keynes following reports of a stabbing there. Thames Valley Police's major crime unit say the women, aged 38 and 24, died at the scene in Bletchley on Christmas Day. A teenage boy and a man in his late 20s are also seriously injured, but in a stable condition in hospital. A dog was also injured in the incident and was taken to vets, but sadly didn't survive. Police say they have arrested a 49-year-old man on suspicion of murder and attempted murder, and he remains in custody. Reform UK's membership has overtaken the Conservatives today, just months after Nigel Farage's return as party leader. Their tracker shows more than 135,000 members, a 300% surge since Farage's comeback in June. Younger supporters, cheaper fees and frustrations with the Tories are all driving that growth, and Farage claims reform is now the future of British politics. Meanwhile, the Conservatives last reported around 120,000 members and have since faced criticism for a lack of direction under leader Kemi Badenoch. Well, the Reform leader Nigel Farage has been speaking to us here on GB News about those figures.
Incredible. Over 15,000 people have joined us and given us their 25 quids over the last 4 days. This is an historic moment when the newest party in British politics overtakes the oldest existing political party in the world. Something is happening. So, of course, I'm delighted.
And Boxing Day shoppers are avoiding the high street today, with footfall down reportedly over 12% compared to figures last year. Retail parks did fare slightly better, but overall activity across the UK is more than 10% lower than in 2023. Analysts blame the shift to online shopping, rising costs for physical stores and changing habits driven by year-round promotions. But Barclays still estimates that we will have spent £4.6 billion today, although most of it, as in previous years, will be online. Our reporter Will Hollis has been on the High Street in Nottingham today with more on what people have been spending.
We're expected to see about 22 million people shopping for Boxing Day sales, but only 14 million of those shoppers will actually be real people on the high street. That good chunk of about 8 million people will just be people that will be logging on online, tapping away and making their purchases online because, as we say, many of the big retailers are staying closed. They would cite that it's because they want people to have more of a family experience, let their staff rest.
Those are the latest headlines for now. Plenty more still to come. I'll be back with you in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. And let's return now to that story about the Azerbaijan Airlines plane, which has crashed, killing 38 people. According to the Reuters news agency, the plane was shot down by a Russian air defence system. And footage online is showing that the plane made a steep descent before crashing in a fireball, with part of its fuselage torn away from the wings. Joining us now to discuss this is defence analyst and former British Army officer Stuart Crawford. Stuart, thank you so much for joining me. It looks increasingly likely that this plane was shot down by Russian anti-aircraft defence. Is that the conclusion that experts are coming to?
Good afternoon or good evening. I think the short answer to that is yes. That's what it looks like at the moment. We have a problem in that the Russians are not usually particularly forthcoming about accidents involving military systems, whether it be at sea, in the air or elsewhere. And so we can only speculate until such times as the real experts on the ground can say one way or another a definitive what happened. But looking at the route of the plane, which is unusual, suggesting that its GPS systems were jammed at some point, and then the actual progress of the flight as it went across the Caspian, went east to the crash point, and then the holes that appear to be in the fuselage, which look as if they might well have been produced by a proximity-fused anti-aircraft missile, then at the moment I think we have to conclude that it was probably shot down tragically by mistake.
Of course, this is a part of the world where there is ongoing military action, and there were reports that there were some Ukrainian drone strikes on Grozny at the time. Could that have had something to do with this mistake?
Oh, I think undoubtedly, yes. If you fly a civilian aircraft into what is essentially a hostile airspace, and remember, there is no such thing as friendly fire, if you think about it, then these accidents will happen. Which is very sad indeed. Civilian aircraft do have or can have anti-missile defences fitted to them, but I suspect in this case with this sort of aircraft, it wasn't fitted, and consequently it seems to have been hit by a Russian made anti-aircraft missile, probably a Pantsir 1, which has a range of sort of 20 kilometres and a ceiling of 15 kilometres, and then eventually been brought down across the Caspian Sea with tragic results for many of the passengers.
Now, you said, Stuart, that the Russians are not very forthcoming about any incidents that involve their military, but the black box, as you know, has now been recovered. Will that mean that we do get to find out what did happen in the final moments of this plane?
Well, let's hope so. I mean, it will, I hope, have recorded what was being said in the cockpit between the pilot and co-pilot and anyone else that happened to be there, and also record much more of what went on with the aircraft in terms of flight profile, etc., etc. We also have the video, which was filmed by some of the survivors inside the body of the aircraft when they knew it was coming down, which must have been an awful situation for them. And I think, you know, on Boxing Day, our hearts must go out to those who didn't make it.
Stuart Crawford, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
Now, we're going to be moving on to talking about festive travel. I've still got my panel in the studio with me. Did you manage to get here to the studio all right today? Any problems with the roads or trains?
I'm actually quite delighted because I live 5 minutes away, and I remember years ago when I used to get a taxi around this time, they were like 3 times as expensive. But I ordered a service that a lot of people use, and it was the same price, and it came in 2 minutes. So I was happy.
Very good, Chloe?
Well, luckily there were tubes running, but no trains, which meant it took me a little bit longer to get here, but nothing too terrible.
Well, millions of people are reportedly experiencing festive gridlock as Britons have attempted to drive around the country to see family and friends this Christmas. But today, Boxing Day, is actually predicted to be one of the quietest days on the road this year. And the Met Office have forecasted quite mild weather with temperatures well above freezing. So joining me is to talk about this travel and what the prospects are is our travel correspondent at The Independent, Simon Calder. Simon, thank you so much for joining me. So today, apparently quite a quiet day, but when should we be wary of travelling?
Well, yes, a lot of people out and about today. I'm talking to you from a station called Norbury in South London. I'm actually hoping to hop on the very last train, which goes in about 10 minutes. If I miss that, there won't be another one till tomorrow. In common with almost all of the UK, your local station has probably had no trains at all today. Everything shut down Christmas Eve at tea time and hasn't come back to life yet. When it does tomorrow, then there are going to be serious problems right across the country for a number of people. We're looking, for example, at London Liverpool Street Station, the busiest in the UK, which is closed now completely until the 2nd of January. At London St Pancras, the hub for the East Midlands Railway to Leicester to Derby to Nottingham to Sheffield, that's closed completely until the 30th, next Monday of December. And London Paddington, this is probably going to affect more people than any other in terms of wanting to make long journeys. That's closed completely also until Monday, and the cause is work on the HS2 line, that very popular high-speed line between London and Birmingham. But it's actually going to affect lots of passengers who are trying to get from London to the west of England and South Wales, or the other direction. And actually, there are going to be possibilities to travel, but you're going to need to go to Euston Station instead. That's the hub for the West Coast main line, and that has problems itself with engineering works. Oh, I think there's a train coming in. This is quite an exciting moment. Hang on. Yep.
If you have to run for the train, Simon, please do. Just I don't want you to miss it. What about the roads? Because, of course, plenty of people will be travelling by car. Fortunately, fairly mild weather, that should help. But every year, the RAC warn that this is going to be the busiest Christmas ever. Do we just have to grin and bear it and accept the fact that we will be sitting in queues?
Well, look, things haven't been too bad today. And actually, because even though tomorrow is, would you believe, Friday and a working day for a number of people, including me, and I suspect you as well, most people won't be going to work. So you'll lose the main kind of commuting traffic. It's going to be busy in shopping centres and so on. And I think that is going to have the biggest effect if you're concerned about it. But the Great Homecoming is not nearly so significant as the Great Getaway. So it will be, I think, probably on most of the roads, pretty quiet up to and including the New Year. And then things will start getting busy again probably a week from now on the 2nd of January. So driving will be okay. And just to sweep up the airlines as well, things have been going pretty well at all the major airports across the UK, and those very good bus drivers, long distance and short distance, they've been at work keeping people moving.
That's good. Great news. Well, it sounds fairly uneventful so far. I don't want you to miss your train, Simon. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope your journey goes smoothly. Simon
Thank
Calder there
you.
from The Independent. Now, I've still got my panel with me in the studio, Paula and Chloe. We were discussing this earlier about travel, but it is frustrating about the trains, isn't it? But frankly, when can the rail lines do engineering work except over the holiday season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky because I live in central London, but I live in a pea-sized flat, so I can just get taxis places because I don't like getting the tubes. I think too many strange people just wander around. And trains, I haven't got a train for a very long time. I think if you live outside of London, you tend to get
You're probably not the best person to ask about
and I
this.
don't travel nationally. I mean, if I travel, I normally get a flight somewhere.
Now, Chloe, I normally get the train in from Suffolk, but there were no trains today, as Simon alluded to. There were closed Liverpool Street, they're working on the lines, fair enough. Drove in fairly smoothly. The biggest difference was no lorries on the road. That makes a big difference, doesn't it, over the festive season?
Yeah, I mean, I never like on the motorway trying to squeeze between two lorries on either side of me. It definitely makes the motorways a bit easier to deal with. I'm glad that I actually did an early Christmas last week, because last year, I mean, if you try and get the trains around Christmas time, it's a nightmare. I was trying to go up north with my tiny little puppy, and it was full and standing on the train all the way, hours and hours, and it was just chaos. So when I went last week, it was nice and quiet, plenty of space on the train, and that was a good idea.
And of course, at the holiday season, everybody has luggage. It's not like commuter days when people are just there with a rucksack or a bag.
Your bag's full of presents to deliver.
That's right, and there's often not room for that. Interestingly, I think the RAC predicted that 30 million people would be travelling over the holiday season. About half of us travel. But in a way, that kind of indicates how spread out families are now. You know, there was a time when people didn't really move away from home. Now, you know, now half of people go to university, they end up leaving family. I mean, do you think, you know, is this a sad thing that people live so far from families?
Well, I actually don't have a close family, so I guess it's probably not the right question for me. But, I mean, years ago, people didn't go to university. It was like only the rich. So now way more people go to university. So children are often living in the other side of the country. But, I mean, if you have family and you get on well with them, travel to see them, you're lucky.
Exactly, It makes childcare a lot harder, because it used to be the case that all your, you know, you've got your auntie, uncle, grandma, grandpa all around to help look after the child. Whereas if you're a couple living in London and your family live up north somewhere, you've got to do it all yourself, or pay for babysitters all the time and childcare. So yeah, it's very different.
And it's one of the reasons why young people say that they aren't going to have children or having fewer children than they would like, because they just don't have that extended family around.
Yeah, well, the thing is that if you want to have a good career, you kind of need to be in London or in some kind of major city.
Not really, because people work from home now. Really,
it's a little bit different post-COVID.
Even if you don't want a career, actually bringing up children does require, you know, an extended family and friends and villages.
And also, just generally speaking, cities are not very conducive to having children. If you live out on some big farm where the kids can all run around and entertain themselves, it's easy. But who wants to have kids in a stuffy little London flat?
That's right.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
It's really hard to buy a flat. I mean, I think a lot of potential parents don't want to bring their child into the world because they don't have the ability.
They can't afford a place with multiple
own a home, and it's very sad.
House prices, distance from parents, a big thing. Now, one of my favourite things about the Christmas season is the singing of traditional carols. My family don't agree, but I love going to carol services, and sometimes they just have to come with me anyway. But here we go. We've got the Vocal Zone Voice Studio Choir from South Derbyshire with Joy to the World.
Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive the King. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. Joy to the earth, the Saviour reigns. Let us and songs and joy, what fields and floods, what fields and plains. Repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love.
Another beautiful carol Well, time now for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to become our biggest ever winner with an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. It's an amazing sum of money and it could make your new year the best year yet. Well, here's all the details you need for your chance to make it yours.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British Giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays? A brand new car? Home improvements? Or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? £50,000 is an amazing amount of money and it could be all yours. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
You're watching Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. Don't go anywhere because there's lots coming up on today's show.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Britain's Royal Collection of Art is one of the most important and largest in the world. And it's also one of the last great European royal collections to remain intact. And built up over many centuries, it has extraordinary depth. And curators have delved into its riches to produce an exhibition of Italian drawings between 1450 and 1600. There are household names here: Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci. Some of the drawings are complete works in themselves. Some are studies for images that would appear in much larger pieces. And some are anatomical studies which enabled these artists to draw the human form in all its perfection.
This is the earliest drawing in the exhibition of around 1450, and it's made by Fra Angelico, the great Florentine painter. It may seem an obvious thing to say, but we only have drawings like this if they have survived. And these drawings were not seen at the time as works of art. They were workshop studies. They were as functional as a hammer or a paintbrush, if you like, in the workshop. But the fact that a drawing would survive from 1450 to the present day shows that first it was useful, and it was a work that would have been referred to constantly in the artist's studio, and only later was it valued by collectors as an exemplar of the artist's genius, if you like, the way in which we might think of it today. So a drawing like this, which is in almost perfect condition, has got a history of being valued for different reasons from when it was produced to the present.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. It's 23 minutes past 5. I'm Miriam Cates. Now, the glass industry is warning that the introduction of a new packaging tax could lead to job losses and higher prices for consumers. Our reporter, Anna Riley, explains.
Shattering the UK glass sector. That's what British Glass says will happen under the government's new packaging tax. It comes into force in April and moves the cost of waste collection and sorting from councils to producers. And the heavier the container, the higher the levy.
Brands, retailers and even the consumer will face higher fees in glass. For example, if you take a 500mm beer bottle, that potentially could have 10, 15 pence of extra cost put onto it because of this EPR tax. So this could push consumers away from glass into less recyclable materials, all based on weight. We believe that EPR should be really driving recyclability, so encouraging those materials that are recyclable, not encouraging us to go to the lowest cost option.
Brewers are also warning that British ales are at risk from glass bottle tax. Timothy Taylor's in Keighley mainly supply beer to pubs, but also sell bottled beer into the grocery industry.
The net cost of council recycling is moving to us. The government just seemed to think that business is this bottomless pit. The assumption initially was almost that we would absorb these costs. Well, I'm sorry, but, you know, a bottled beer business is a pretty low margin business. There's just no way that producers in the industry can absorb that.
With the additional costs incurred for businesses by the budget, there are fears for the future of the pub industry.
I know from our own pub, Woolly Sheep up in Skipton, our costs are going to go up by over £60,000 just for that one pub, between national insurance, living wage, and also the reduction in the rates discount that we get. Now again, that's a healthy pub, but there are loads of pubs run by husband and wives or business partners that are marginal. Next summer into the autumn, you're going to see a lot of pubs closing, and that's awful for the people running the business, but it impacts us because that's fewer outlets for us to kind of put forward our award-winning ales.
The government say its new packaging tax will create a £10 billion investment in the recycling sector over the next decade and see packaging producers, rather than the taxpayer, covering the costs of managing waste. Anna Riley, GB News.
Our reporter Anna Riley there. Well, joining me on the panel, I've still got broadcaster Paula London and political commentator Chloe Dobbs. Now, Chloe, isn't this typical of a net zero policy, which its aim is to increase recycling, but ends up doing the exact opposite?
Absolutely. I mean, we're suddenly having this war on glass, it would seem, but before we were all talking about plastic. Plastic often doesn't get recycled. You put it in the recycling and it ends up just going to landfill. It feels like another one of these policies that's just ticking a box. You know, for example, us not renewing contracts for North Sea oil because we want to hit our net zero targets, but it just meaning that we need to ship in fossil fuels from abroad because we're not yet completely able to rely on the wind and solar and whatnot that we've got already in this country.
And you mentioned the steel industry earlier. We've now lost the ability, or about to lose the ability in this country to produce primary steel, which means we will be importing it from countries like China and Turkey, which often use coal to produce their steel, so far more dirty.
Absolutely, and then obviously the time and emissions that are required to transport it to us. It's not helping the environment at all. Unless we were in a position where we no longer need virgin steel, it just does not make sense to close down that Tata Steel Works. And I think people are awake to that. And it doesn't mean that you don't care about the environment. It just means you want something that actually makes a difference to the environment, not just box ticking.
And I think, Paula, people actually are in favour of recycling, and a lot of people go to a lot of effort to sort out all their recycling. And when they discover that the local council is just burning it all together anyway, it's obviously, you know, a big letdown. Do you think we should invest more in recycling schemes, just ones that actually work?
Well, I mean, I admit I put all rubbish in one bag and that's it, because I know when the dustman comes round, he puts all of the rubbish together. So people are just wasting their time. And even if we did hit net zero, it would make no difference when you've got countries like China emitting so many emissions. Keir must think that we're stupid, because if we are trying to get our emissions down, but we're paying other countries to do stuff and their emissions are going higher because we are paying them to do it, what's the point? Because obviously, as Chloe correctly said, there's no border around the world. But I just think he's trying to attack the hospitality business and the pubs. I really think he's trying to attack pubs because he loves to attack, sadly, the working class. He's attacked people that were patriotic, were on the streets, etc. And now he wants to attack the one place the working man and woman loves to go is the pub. But he's trying to disguise it. But we're bright.
Feels very
we see him.
anti-British.
Yes.
And the
very
war on the
anti-British.
farmers.
He hates British. Well, he seems to hate British things, I believe.
There are better ways of doing this. I mean, if you go abroad to Europe, a lot of soft drinks even come in in glass bottles, and then the cafe or whatever gets some money back for taking that back to the wholesaler. I mean, there's ways of making this work that
years ago, Lucozade, it was like that.
Yeah, you get some money back for taking it. Anyway, thank you very much. We'll be discussing more of that later on, but we're going to go to a break now, and after that, we're going to have some sport.
Hello there, good afternoon. This is your latest GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Dull, damp, dreary, all words that sum up the forecast for many of us over the next few days. Whilst high pressure is in charge, extending in from parts of continental Europe, there is a lot of cloud trapped underneath this high, producing our anticyclonic gloom. Quite misty and murky scenes into this evening and overnight, particularly across Wales, central southern areas of England. Band of rain just pushing across the far north of Scotland, skirting into the Highlands, the Outer Hebrides and towards Orkney as well, quite damp and drizzly here. With all the cloud around though, temperatures won't be dropping too far at least. Will certainly remain frost-free, but we might get down towards 4-6 degrees Celsius in a few spots. As you start off Friday morning then, particularly across central southern areas, it is worth bearing in mind there could be some localised travel issues due to that reduced visibility from all the mist and fog that will be around first thing. Perhaps the best chance of a few brighter spells throughout Friday will be across parts of eastern Scotland, but further towards the west we are going to see this rain band in play for a good portion of the day. But into the afternoon, hopefully, we'll start to see that rain easing off a touch more. It will turn lighter and patchier here. Otherwise, for much of Northern Ireland, England and Wales, really Friday is a very similar situation to today. Widespread grey, overcast skies. A lot of that mist and murk really still lingering around to produce a fairly dull situation. Temperatures, because of that lack of sunshine, are going to be dropping down a bit. We might just skirt into double digits across some parts of Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and northern England. There is going to be very little change on that as we head into Friday evening and the weekend. They're only slowly starting to see a few brighter spells arriving as we head towards Saturday and Sunday. Most notably, though, it is looking to turn more unsettled as we head into the new working week, particularly across Scotland. So it's worth staying up to date with the forecast as we head towards New Year. Bye-bye.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 5:30 on Boxing Day and you're watching Merry Christmas Britain with me, Miriam Cates. And it's now time to go through all the latest sports news with Aidan McGee. Aidan, some football... Good to see you and happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas to you too.
Some football results coming in.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we know about Man City and Everton's draw 1-1 this afternoon. Big shock just a few miles down the road from here at Stamford Bridge in the last few minutes or so. Chelsea were leading against Fulham by 1-0. They're West London rivals, and Fulham with 2 goals in the last 13 minutes. It means Fulham have won at Stamford Bridge for the first time since October 1979. They haven't played there every single year since then, but nonetheless, first time in 45 years. There's a little bit of West London bants, as we call it, that goes on between the 4 clubs in West London, Brentford, QPR, Fulham and Chelsea. These 2 have played each other, the latter 2, of course, today. And there's a little bit of it annoys some Chelsea fans that their ground is technically in Fulham when it's, they're called Chelsea. And, of course, they're only about 2 miles down the road from each other. And so Fulham, after that sensational win today, my friend Chloe has messaged me. I think we've got a picture of it here. And they've quite cheekily written down at the bottom, there's only one team in Fulham. So they completed the win there today, and Fulham having an excellent season. A real shock there, because Chelsea have been going great guns. But Bournemouth and Palace 0-0. So those fans who travelled all that way, they didn't see very much, unfortunately. They didn't. West Ham got a 1-0. They've fared slightly better, similar journey, 1-0 to them. Wolves against Man United is underway as of just 5:30. So what time is it now? Yeah, 4 minutes into that. 0-0, I expect, but I don't know for certain. Leicester is later on. Who else was there? Let me see. I'm looking down my list. Newcastle beat Aston Villa by 3-0. And the match between Frank Lampard's Coventry against Wayne Rooney's Plymouth, 4-0 to Frank Lampard this time.
Wow.
And it was speculated on the radio that, given the way things are going for Wayne Rooney, he might need to go into the jungle next year for his misses.
Yes, to get some popularity back. But we were talking earlier about how it's quite unique in Britain to play on Boxing Day, and a lot of the European clubs have 2 weeks off. Yeah. That makes it quite a pivotal point of the season, doesn't it? And it matters whether clubs do well this weekend.
I remember in 1986, I was only a small boy, but should emphasise that. But I went to Gillingham against Brentford on the Boxing Day, and then Oxford against QPR on the 27th. It wasn't uncommon to play 2 games in 2 days. That was a thing up until probably about 15 years ago.
Wow.
In the Premier League era, when they reduced the number of sides, they've kind of done away with it because there are dangers of playing 2 in 2 games. But I think as recently as the late 60s, early 70s, there were teams playing on Christmas Day.
Wow.
Which seems astonishing. There was somebody, I was at my local pub. It's a David Bowie-themed pub, funny enough, that's irrelevant. But there's a guy said to me that he's a Charlton fan, and he was saying to me that back in the 60s, he saw Charlton play Plymouth at the Valley on Christmas Day, and on the Boxing Day, they went down to Plymouth, and the scores were something like 6. Charlton thrashed Plymouth on Christmas Day, and it was a reverse score the following day, because it must have been the travel implications.
So people have their Christmas lunch and then go and watch the football?
They must have done. They must have done. I mean, but so they don't know they're born these days. But nonetheless, if you think about it, it's not uncommon for it to be 26th, 28th.
Yes, depends on what day of the week Boxing Day falls on.
But the demand is there. They're getting paid absolute fortunes for this. And the fans are the last ones to be considered. I mean, QPR, for example, travelled down to Swansea today for a 3 o'clock kickoff. No trains out of Paddington today. And I looked at all the networks around the country, barely any trains running at all.
Yeah.
So, and that's to say, we didn't get much for our buck, did we, when the government made that deal with the train drivers? Because I think it's engineering works, they're saying.
Yeah. I mean, they have to do them sometime, don't they? But it is such an important day for sport. But yeah,
it's so long-distance travel as well. I mean, we think about it. I mean, as I say, the fixture list is meant to be quite localised, but there aren't many.
Not particularly local games.
Chelsea Fulham. At least when Chelsea lost, they wouldn't have had far to. Well, it's a home game for them, but that's local. The rest of them. I mean, Aston Villa going up to Newcastle. Yeah, that's not local. Tottenham to Nottingham Forest. I just think it could have been done a bit better. Maybe a couple more London derbies, perhaps.
And quickly on darts. Yes. I'm not convinced darts is a sport, but anyway.
It is. I had an argument on Radio 5 about 5 Live about 12 years ago about it being a sport, and I was very much saying it was. But
it's
I would
a skill. It's not a sport.
Without a skill, without doubt, it's a skill. Yeah, but would you say Formula 1 is a sport?
Well, no, not really. I mean, it's motorsport, isn't it?
If you're being consistent, that's absolutely fine. But no, we've got this phenomenon which you'll have heard about, Luke Littler, who is now 17. I think he's 18 in just a couple of weeks, but he's in action on the 28th, and I've not seen a breakout performer that young in a sport really drive the sport onto a different level, because ticket sales are 83% up on year from last year. I was there last Sunday. Wonderful event. I covered it 20 years ago at the Circus Tavern in Purfleet. Barry Hearn said to me, we're thinking of taking it out of here, which was 800 people it held, to the Ali Pali, 6,000. And I said, you'll lose the pub atmosphere.
Yeah.
I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. And next step, I think the last one will be Ali Pali next year. I think they'll go somewhere bigger. Don't rule it out happening at an open-air stadium.
It's amazing how a particular performer can really capture the public imagination and raise the game of a sport.
Yeah, he didn't even win it last year.
No,
It was Luke
right,
Humphries who won it. But, I mean, he's made about £1 million quid in a year. He bought his mum and dad a new house. He's got a new missus. So where did it all go wrong?
Well, I'm sure you can tell us that, Aidan. Thank you so much for joining me.
All the best to you.
You too, and you're watching Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. My lovely panel will be back to go through what's been making the headlines this Boxing Day, including a Twitter spat between Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 incredible young people from Essex are planning to become the youngest people ever to row, not sail, row, across the Atlantic Ocean.
It's about for 3,000 miles.
It is.
Give or take.
Almost exactly that, Sam.
The 3 flying fish, so-called, consists of Anna, Dunk, Harry, Alan and Rowan Daly, who are preparing to row that 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. It would be the second largest ocean in the world, and the trio are aiming to do that challenge in support of the Teenage Cancer Trust.
Well, I'm very pleased to say that Anna and Harry from the Flying Fish join us now. Very good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
I think the two of you are bonkers, but brilliant. Absolutely incredible what you're doing to raise money for Teenage Cancer Trust. Why did you want to do this?
So our third person, Rowan, his friend actually died. So when he was in secondary school, I believe, one of his peers passed away, and Teenage Cancer Trust supported them and their family a lot. So it was definitely the right charity. Yeah, it was.
Absolutely awful. So you wanted to do something to raise money for teenage cancer. Why rowing?
So my dad did it in 2021.
The trip, the Atlantic trip?
Yeah, he rowed it as a pair. Where we live in Essex, they actually build the boats there. So we used to cycle round there past the boatyard, and he got interested and actually did it. He was the first year after COVID. And one night, we all met in the Air Cadets, so one night after Air Cadets, Rowan actually dropped me off home and the boat was outside. We were obviously waiting to get it sold. And I think he was asking some questions, and we stood there at my porch and went, Rowan said, I reckon we could do that. And I was like, yeah, I reckon we could. And then we brought Harry on board, and that's kind of how it all came together.
If people are watching and they want to support you, do you have a
Yeah, we've got
GoFundMe page
social
yet?
media platforms at the Free Flying Fish. That's Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, and our GoFundMe links in all of the bios on there.
Fantastic.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 20 to 6 on Boxing Day. You're watching me, Miriam Cates, on GB News. Now, in what will surely go down as a significant moment in British political history, the Reform Party has overtaken the Conservative Party in terms of their membership numbers. This is the moment it happened.
We're there now.
Any more to go? In fact...
We've done it. We're through. We're through. How about that? You think your opposition? It's going to be a long...
Of course, since the general election in July, the Reform Party has improved their standing in the polls, and now some opinion polls are even putting them ahead of the governing Labour Party. So is Nigel Farage destined to be Prime Minister after the next election? Well, joining me, I've still got my panel with me in the studio, Paula and Chloe. And while we've been on air, a bit of a Twitter spat has broken out.
Yes.
So Kemi Badenoch has accused Nigel Farage of manipulating his own supporters at Christmas. And she's saying that this tracker, this ticker that the Reform Party are using to clock up their membership numbers is actually not real. And she says in this tweet, it's fake and coded to tick up automatically. We've been watching the back end for days and can also see they've just changed the code to a link to a different site as people point this out. Farage doesn't understand the digital age. This kind of fakery gets found out pretty quickly, although not before many are fooled. However, Nigel Farage has hit back, and he said in another tweet, Kemi says, I don't understand the digital age. I have 5.4 million followers and she has 320,000. We understand you're bitter, upset and angry that we are now the second biggest party in British politics and that the Conservative brand is dying under your leadership. However, this is not an excuse to accuse us of committing fraud. We will gladly invite one of the big four firms in to audit our membership numbers as long as you do the same. We have also heard from many Tory whistleblowers that will swear that ballots were sent out to long-expired or resigned ex-members in your leadership election. It's an open secret at CCHQ that your membership numbers are fake. Wow. Well, some good Boxing Day entertainment there.
Yes.
But, Paula, is this significant or just a bit of a spat?
I mean, it's handbags at dawn, but, I mean, Nigel is not someone that will take anything on the chin. But I'm not a woke person, as everyone knows. But I think Kemi has been a little bit ageist because she's saying, oh, you don't understand the digital age. And Nigel is 60, let's not forget, and she is 44. So I don't think she should have said that. And also, Nigel does understand the digital age. Nigel understands TikTok. And if Conservatives understood TikTok, they may not have lost so many seats because he is brilliant on that. Everyone loves him, and it's the younger crowd. It's not just people under 18 that can't vote. It's the 18, 19, 20, the university students. So don't underestimate Mr. Farage. He knows a lot about the digital age.
I mean, that's right, isn't it, Chloe? But to send a tweet like that from Kemi Badenoch, I mean, you must be pretty sure that she's right, because surely they may even be legal threats if she's wrong. She's accusing them of fraud.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it doesn't seem like a very well thought through tweet. I mean, first of all, I think the way it's written, how she's trying to explain the way that it's fake, it seems quite confusing to me. It's quite a big accusation.
Yeah.
And Nigel, I think, has done a pretty fiery response there. And Zia Yusuf, the chairman, has now also tweeted with pictures of the back end and also asking the question, how on earth would she even know what's going on in the back end? It's not like she's the one that's coded the website, and explaining exactly how it's fetching the data. I think they've made quite a strong case there that they are in the right and Kemi's made a completely wrong accusation. Obviously, this is happening right now. There may be more tweets to come and Kemi may provide some evidence as to how she's come to this conclusion. But it looks like this is someone who's not fit to be the leader of a big party when she's putting out these tweets that make her look like she's just throwing her toys out the pram in denial of Reform's success.
I mean, it is an extraordinary thing to show how much politics has changed. 20, 30 years ago, all these fiery exchanges happened in the House of Commons, and that's where people debated, they voted, they made their arguments. But now, is the House of Commons almost becoming irrelevant? Are the major arguments happening now on X?
I absolutely love X. I probably spend about 6 hours a day on Twitter. I have the odd body myself, but normally I'm very nice. But I love it. Arguments do happen, but I'm not a politician. You have to be professional, and what she said is wrong. It's very, very rude, apart from anything else. And yeah, I think she'll probably regret that tweet, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and to be fair to Kemi, Nigel Farage responded saying basically you're bitter and twisted. I mean, I personally, it really frustrates me, these personal arguments. I understand that X is informal and this is where politics is happening now. But I think it does demean politics and the kind of, yes, of course you have to attack your opponent's policy. But I think on both sides, once you start attacking people and accusing people of fraud rather than taking their policy to task, you've really demeaned all politicians, not just your opponent.
Yeah, it seems a little bit childish and unprofessional. Kemi is someone who likes to be fiery, and she shouldn't, hold back when she's talking about whether it's Keir Starmer or Nigel Farage. But I think you lose credibility if it just seems like you're just, calling someone a fraud, calling someone silly names, rather than actually saying why their policies are wrong.
Yeah, or why your policies are right. We've got this extraordinary situation now where the Conservative Party is having to compete with another party occupying a similar space, attracting similar voters, rather than focusing their attack just on the Labour Party.
Yeah, she's obviously very, very worried. Labour are very, very worried about reform, and obviously the Tories are. So, I mean, lots of feathers are being ruffled. But I think it's important to remember, how much does it really mean, the membership? Financially, not that much, because if it's just £25. And I know Keir, for many years, has tried to stop the memberships from being able to help decide who the new leader would be if the Prime Minister was ousted. So what powers do you have if you can't help, vote and say who you want to be a new leader? What can you actually do?
Yes, and the Conservative Party has a very small membership now compared to in its heyday. But on the other hand, it still did win 4 elections between 2010 and including 2019, even though its membership was much, much smaller than the Labour Party. So is the membership number significant?
I don't think it's going to determine how well you're going to do electorally. The Labour Party have way, way, way more members than both the Tories and the Reform Party. But I do think that this is a big moment for the Reform Party because it just shows that they have a lot of momentum behind them and that support for the Conservative Party is starting to die. Also, bear in mind that all those members that have signed up are people who are quite fresh members because it's a new party who are keen, whereas there'll be plenty of people who still have their Conservative Party membership, myself included. I haven't bothered to cancel it just out of laziness, even though I'm a Reform supporter. Yeah. And so there will be a lot of people who are members of the Tory Party who aren't active members. So, and a lot of those members that signed up, now they'll feel invested. They'll feel like they want to get out on the doorstep when it comes to campaigning, maybe at the local elections next year. So I think it's important for them to make a thing of it. But does it mean that Nigel is definitely going to be in number 10 in 2029? Of course it doesn't.
No, and one of the reasons that it's going to be very difficult for him to become Prime Minister is not necessarily a problem with vote share, but in the way that our system works. And the Reform vote, they may be on 25 points right now, maybe they'll get up to 30. But if it's evenly spread across most seats, actually they'll still struggle against Labour and the Conservatives.
I don't think they'll struggle against Labour because Labour have annoyed every sector of the electorate, everybody. The old people, young people, the farmers, so many people. So I don't think they'll struggle with Labour. But I'm not a fan of PR voting because I think it's way too difficult to form a government. In other countries, they have huge problems and they can't form a government. So we don't want that. So I think if they keep on going how they're going, and as I said earlier, they need to have more Conservative MPs to effect and they need to make sure any candidates are obviously very strictly vetted, and they need some past Conservative MPs to decide to stand as Reform candidates because the electorate do like to vote for someone they know a little bit about them. And I know Nigel, or Richard at the time, was a bit nervous about letting people know too much about the candidates because then everyone was going to Google them and try to find rubbish about them. But, you need to do all the vetting, and the only reason they didn't have time to do such deep vetting, obviously, because Rishi called the snap, I think, because he was going to get replaced. But they're going to have plenty of time. I don't think they'll have to wait 4 years. I think around a year or 2 maximum for a snap. But he should work on it now and try to get more Conservative MPs. Maybe, what's his name, Jacob Rees-Mogg, he would be fantastic to stand as a Reform candidate.
But this is the really interesting question, because clearly the momentum is with Reform. This is quite an important psychological moment, because if Reform becomes seen as a bigger, more popular party than the Conservative Party, then all sorts of things will happen, like the right-wing media will go to Farage first for comment before Kemi Badenoch, and it'll be much more difficult for the Conservatives to make themselves heard. But I also wonder if actually, are we moving on from the days of traditional campaigning? We saw Reform win 4 million votes in July without really any local campaigning because they didn't have time to do it. Do you think this kind of boots on the ground, delivering leaflets, is that past? Are we on to TikTok campaigning?
It's got pretty mad.
I don't think that we should. I don't think we're ever going to, or at least anytime soon, get rid of doorstep campaigning when it's close to an election. But I think one of the reasons why the Tories failed is not just because they failed to deliver on their promises, but because of their old school approach to campaigning, thinking it's all knocking on doors and delivering leaflets. Everyone's on social media all of the time now, and the Reform Party recognised that, so they were able to get a big vote share.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And we were talking earlier, though, about potential funding, because Reform, obviously, coming from a position of not having a long history of donors.
Yep.
And there is this discussion about whether or not they can get a massive donation from Elon Musk if they can find a way of making it legal, because we don't allow foreign donations. But we were arguing about this behind the scenes. You think that this is actually a good thing for Reform if they can make it work?
Yes, because like Nick Candy, for instance, I know obviously he's not foreign, but he gave $250,000 to the Conservative Party before as a donor. So a lot of other Conservative donors are just going to switch to Reform. And obviously he's very influential, so people do follow what people do. And also, I don't really see a huge problem because millions has been given to the Labour Party, international donors, and no one had a problem with that. But they're jealous of Elon Musk because he's the richest person in the world. And not only is he just rich, he is very powerful because of Twitter. And also it can be done legally because obviously he has Twitter, he has a lot of other companies, and like the British arm of Twitter, he can donate from there. So there are definitely ways around it. They're just jealous because he's rich, popular, and he feels like wokeness took one of his children away from him. So it's very personal with him.
A very quick final word. Could be legal, but will it be ethical?
I'm a little bit on the fence. I think Elon Musk, I think that his input into the party, just as someone who is a great businessman, will be very good. Advice will be good. But now that he's involved with Trump's government, I think that raises questions about international interference in elections.
Yes, I think that's a very good point. And I personally think we shouldn't allow any foreign donations to any party because I think it complicates
Well,
things.
Labour did it so much.
Well, I know. And it's what I mean.
And
There are
Tories.
legal ways of doing this. It doesn't make it ethical. But, yeah, so do you think this could be a year for Reform to overtake both big
This is a great year. Trump as well.
Yeah.
January, I can't wait.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much to both my panel, Paula and Chloe, for joining me on giving up your Boxing Day, and thank you for coming in despite all the travel difficulties. Thank you so much for watching Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. I'm Miriam Cates, and there's plenty more programming on GB News coming up today to help get through the Christmas period. Have a very, very Merry Christmas.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. If you are planning a Boxing Day walk today, then for some of you I can promise dry conditions. That is all thanks to this area of high pressure out in continental Europe that is stretching its way in across much of England and Wales. But further towards the north, we do have this cold front slipping southwards across Scotland and Northern Ireland. So it is a damper and wetter start to the day here with drizzly outbreaks of rain. To the far north of the Northern Isles, we will see some slightly brighter skies throughout today, a few showers to watch out for, but the winds will be a touch lighter today compared to what we did see on Christmas Day itself. This rain band then is going to be in play across quite a lot of areas of Scotland, so really quite damp and dreary, unfortunately. Certainly raincoats will be needed for any outdoor activities here. Hopefully in Northern Ireland it will turn drier into the afternoon, still relatively cloudy. The best chance of seeing some sunshine is going to be across parts of northeastern England, parts of northeast Wales as well. Might just see a few cloud breaks also. Otherwise it's quite widespread grey skies for many of us. Temperatures generally around 10 or 11 degrees Celsius as our highs. Into this evening and overnight, that rain band is still in play across the far northwest, still quite damp and drizzly here. Elsewhere, it's a cloudy night. Can't rule out some spots of drizzle also over the higher ground sites, fog in there as well. But with all the cloud around, it's certainly not going to be too chilly. Temperatures holding up in mid-single figures at least. On Friday, well, there's not that much deal of a change. You'll see a lot of widespread cloud around grey skies for many of us. Again, a touch of drizzle possible over the highest sites. So the rain band across Scotland will begin to fade out a touch more. The rain here generally turning lighter and patchier. The rest of the brightness across parts of the Northern Isles, where here we'll start to see some cooler conditions moving its way in. Is there any chance of some sunshine for other areas? Well, hopefully on Saturday we will start to see more in the way of those sunny spells emerging. But by the time we reach the new working week, it's looking unsettled again. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. Are you crazy.
I'm in shock.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week is Chocolate Week, the ultimate celebration of everything rich, sweet and indulgent.
Yes, and we now have the best person in the studio with us to satisfy all of your chocolate cravings. We're joined now by master chocolatier Ollie the Choc. Ollie,
hello.
Really good to see you this
Thank you for having me.
And you brought some of your chocolate in with you.
I did. I brought some tasting samples. You're very welcome to help yourself.
So what have you got here? Tell us.
So this is my signature chocolate. I call it the Holy Grail. It's got sea salt flakes, crushed Oreo, caramel fudge pieces, very Moorish.
I love a caramel and salt combo, just, you know. I feel like you see it everywhere now. Look,
you won't be disappointed.
Look, I want everyone to see a close-up of this one. Can we get a shot on this one? So this is Oreo, there we are, caramel and salt. Do you want to try some?
You go first.
Help yourselves. And then this bar of chocolate is a little bit of a wild card. That's a mystery flavour, so...
OK, I love a mystery.
I'm not going to tell you what that is.
Hold on this one. This one's amazing.
Are you?
Oreo, caramel.
That's my biggest seller.
I'll keep my palate clean for this. So this is a mystery flavour.
You've got to guess what that is.
Is that a nut in there, I see? Right, here we go. Ready?
I'm not saying anything.
Talk us through.
Very crunchy.
For me, I'm all about textures in chocolate.
Me too.
It has got a good crunch to it, hasn't it? It's not the kind of flavour that you would expect.
Oh, I can't get it.
Is it sweet? Is it salty?
No, it's salty, yeah.
It's
OK,
salty.
hang on, bit more.
OK.
Bit more.
I mean, just keep going.
Crisps? Wait,
It is crispy, it's crunchy. Could it be crisps?
I think it could be crisps. Yeah, it's crisps.
So what flavour?
Salt and vinegar. Cheese and onion.
Yes, nailed it. You know.
Oh, you're much better than me.
Love that.
Do you know what? I think I've got a bit of a cold, so my taste buds are
Oh, you're going to blame that, are you?
That's my excuse. That's delicious.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Very good evening to you. The top story tonight. Well, US officials say there are early indications that a passenger plane that crashed, killing 38 people, was downed by a Russian air defence system. Sources say the Azerbaijani Airlines flight was hit by a missile